inequality, kind of describing structural equality, the wages on the rise, guarding to the figures of inequality on the rise, welcome to the numbers high now, and trend the slow growth, it's a hangover, the great recession, the equality, the figures of the wages with by 3% of the market growth, 2.4% of the gains, for those in a position with the greater than 22.9% of the rate, the employer-based insurance force, WAG, stagnation, expansive medical day, RESA facilitates employer self-insurance, Marmar, et al. 14, the RESA facilitates employer health insurance, the employers other didn't pay for the financial under RESA, the employers can avoid the oversight in regulation, rising costs, the shifted costs, and employees raise the premiums, out-of-pocket costs, the employment insurance is in trouble, the worker income stagnant, health insurance, inflation, because most of the gains for productivity workers at the low end have been hit hard as the increased cost sharing causes problems. 1 in 10 have used single savings, use the medical bills, increased debt leads to the hospital to call in collection agencies, the symptoms of bigger problems, 29% of the bankruptcies, the medical bills, and numbers were worse for non-group individual plans, and Medicaid programs related to salary insurance is disproportionate impact when employees are budgeting for compensation. All the above is including the calculations, the growth of expenses directly impacted wage growth, health spending is a driving factor. The 35-year wage inflation trend and domestic inequality destroys foreign engagements that undermines U.S. development model. Campbell 14, the impact of inequality will impact the foundation of U.S. foreign policy that creates the global systems required. They sense the external responsibility coincided with activists and enforce the unprecedented activism and the population treaties get by. They will view foreign policy luxury for right for cuts. The other countries emulate the American way design development models, access to higher education, innovation, and upper mobility have an attractive, but durable U.S. middle classes and most compelling to these subsidized cuts. Asia, the U.S. moving the other. This undermines the critical component of the South Ireland model of which we can emulate the myths of the orientation, the competition, the rest of the comprehensive aspects of the concepts of inequalities and reduction support for the building blocks for international engagement, the biggest threat, and it specifically undermines democratic globalism. 11 women 16, the gap between the top and the bottom is driving to grow the economic as seminal. The rate of increase in inequality speaks of the shrinking middle class represents a versus democracy. The economic equality poses serious problems of procedural democracy. The human agency presupposes the basic needs will be, which may be less given the disparities in the income, growing inequalities as a threat and trust those with the bottom experience of political alienation. Democracy requires participation to an extent beyond voting. The entry of the middle class began to result in a greater level of civic participation. The historical logistical recessions found the myths of the rising inequality. There are serious challenges to democracy in the U.S. We are seeing an erosion. Voters appear to be rebelling against those indicating who was opposed to the open borders and were challenging globalism. The election of Trump represents a desire for authoritarianism in U.S. Democratic leadership solves multiple existential threats. Casper 17, the U.S. has an advantage economic and military strength, but it's lacking is the will to make the case for the people. The terror war, refugees, and military intervention results in the American leads of acting external. There's not found a map. It is very real. The terror extremist parties, the aggressive Russia, the will return to the world. The right for thriving is the U.S. retreat. The American leadership begins at home. The American island, the world democracy and human rights. There's no union. The importance of these things to spread democracy. The only proven remedy to any every crisis. The like the world war, the poverty, terrorism, all generated exacerbated the authoritarian regimes. The American leadership is required because there's no one else. There's no weapon or war more powerful. And Trump issues a speed bump. Long-term foundations of internationalism remain intact. Branson, Nettle, 17, there were concerns the U.S. was turning inward. Yeah, this proved not the death knell for power. The Americans experienced the periodic moments of doubt rather than the foundational turn for the internationalism and taken to the laundering strains. The economic leverage is one example. Trump is disturbing, but we have lived through periods of delusion before the global engagement restarted itself in backsliding, combined with the autocratic hardening caused the interstate wars. Kendall Taylor 16. Interstate wars rise, its democracy declines within the country. Their autocratic conditional authority and hard news increases global stability, whereas autocracies, the autocracy experience safely declines significantly in the international order. The rise of decline to the U.S. anti-U.S. sentiment, the autocracies view the creation of external enemies and effective means for abusing public support democracy to where area where Western actions can affect outcomes and specifically causes SEA instability. Set the global model for regressive ethnic insurgency. Kurska, forcing the aggression democracy in South Asia has implications for regional security. The SEA has been the template for the global direction. Democratic countries are going to wealthier populations. Recently, democracies are looking towards an example of regression. They vote poorly for the world. Regression could due to the internal conflict, traditional hybrid governments, face civil authoritarians, prove poor negotiating partners of insurgency. Regression to the conflict in Myanmar, the instability helped facilitate the paramilitary dispersing leaders war on top of the Gaza insurgency. And SCA instability escalates, cause extinction. 017 notes to question the point of AC will not take a role in the regional matters. The intersection of the SCA. If we do not have a regional organization who balkanize the bickering led to the World War, the nations of the SCA have been created to led to the higher degree of having the Balkans. Wise has prevailed decided war SCA and essential for survival. We live in turbulent nationalism. Unchecked would destroy ourselves. We should lead in promoting further understanding and induces separatist pressures. The impact is extinction. Valska 14. There is a new omniscient global the breakup of political entities through separatism. The nation state their multinational ethnic minorities which oppress and the diverse set. They will exacerbate mismanagement of the planet. Think of 1,000 fragmented countries competing would be El Dorado for organized crime, the jihadists and governments over the pandemics, warming terrorism, and not only global finance and unions micro states that would be less capable of balkanization. The first war led to the second separatism, increase the probability of the third, and decrease wages cause trucker shortages. McKevitt 17. The trucking industry is short of 50,000 drivers. These shortages go in with the unstable labor model. The turnover exists due to low wages. The shortage impacts of the right industry increase the number of the truckers, but also material impact to the companies that rely on the services. Even though they have demand for the emission amount of drivers, cost that devastates the chemical industry growth. Pair 17. The chemical industry is a trigger renaissance era thanks to the cheap gas industry post the wave of expansion. The one nature broadly conceivable the growth transportation transportation side, the results were the worst. The truckers were the main mode of transportation, the chemicals, and over 54% of the shipments in the industries on the thoroughs of the major shortages. 70% of the respondents report that they are concerned about the shortage of hampering growth, and continued growth unlocks new catalytic reactions that solves waste, business versus the development of chemical industry directly responsible for the advance of the environment together. Priority problems about the nature of industrial accidents. This provides the backdrop for the Green Commission sustainability is important. The PS waste management quickly and just to others. That should be eliminating waste and development of catalytic reactions important study can develop solutions and track the problems like require concerted approach. And waste destroys biospheric nutrient cycle. The impacts of extinction. Henford 12. There are no organisms that can use waste as food or breaking the biospheric nutrient cycle to eat resources that turn into waste. The plants and animals on which rely are becoming toxic because of the waste being to pollute the large scale. We are wasting Earth. Unless we take countermeasures, the planet will become uninhabitable for us and other species. We are browning Earth. Contention to its coverage. Bioterrorist attack is inevitable. One cause extinction. Miller 6 of the world is into the age of bioengineering pandemics. The new technology of bioengineering and the pandemic and likely to collapse. Economic law North America say BVP are inevitable. The stage will be on a bubble. We have prepared ourselves in the engineering lower cost generations smaller workers swamp so to be vastly zero demand. Biotech through our bioengineering create human team to modify the world. Virus which is facility and not just concerned this is too late subsequent of technology will prepare nations to be able to survive and adapt. But any energy enemy nation can spread the virus so the lethality shows ability they might kill hundreds of millions of engineering viruses. The crowd internet connected world could use devastating pandemic developing the viruses and cheap and easy legitimate accidents that have occurred. We also accept the in our garage territory. Other countries like Iran, North Korea will least be the only see rational for say to unleash a contagious threat is more unstable given the ability to launch the attack seriously or more urbanized and densely packed since they might food and water they rise on the distant locations relying on delivery systems they might shut down in this illegal contagious virus. The BVP disaster unawares and they struck with the US because of where the mightiest military fuel immune to attack they could kill more people than the even larger nuclear attack could be like collapse civilization entirely. The impact doesn't have to be huge. A single attack with sizable casualties puts massive pressure on the government to respond with force. Record all 9 the biological attacks get up unprecedented consequences reload like people population instead of following attack the government generate fear and panic and fear take hold of the country up the our society the domestic community to regain the confidence that any attack to destroy the institutions. The use of biological weapons in prior adoption of biological agents as their autonomic worlds of known their use system. The terrorist groups as biological weapons means treating individual days of exploit and prevent detection and sort of prophylaxis, and only a universal health insurance can effectively treat those infected and contain spread. Peterson 14, the terrorist group can really deal biological weapons through digital targets healthcare workers live in America should be together protecting every American that means protection of any American without healthcare. It's all security measures along with weapons or open water and invasive technology the internet have putting them in the public arena. This advertising can have the next massive murder that we had designed or drugs that really become aware of the tech media healthcare surveillance program. They do not report the treatment the entire system were infected the second way because they lack the health insurance thing worse they'll reflect the outbreak the decades of treatment health insurance access to healthcare lack of health insurance will also patients wait longer than the other dedication treatment or critical lack of assessment and installation quarantine the disease is spread with unchecked results could be devastating. The chicken will continue infecting others. Security through prevention vaccines that tools to prevent access to healthcare system. The AZ security through prevention vaccines that tools to prevent viral attack. The vaccination will be successful. The population will need to access healthcare. The plan achieves universal comprehensive coverage through combination of a mandate and cost control. Davis now what exactly does HAA accomplish? Universal coverage requiring insurance companies to insure all regardless of the thing it just says. The cost can be used to access the incentive of a state regulation requires every American for health insurance policy. Any employers health insurance receive a cash payment. The reason from that time on will be required to use that extra compensation for these health insurance will ensure Americans will be required to purchase the insurance of those above the population. Receive 100% of the subsidies, almost 40% of the population can receive subsidies. All Americans are purchasing plans listed on the state Ministry of Public Exchange with at least one as good as the plan to be able to all federal employees and covered to be mandatory for everyone. The plan. The United States federal government should establish a essentially financed system of private health insurance requiring enrollment through premium surcharges to relocate federal tax subsidy funding for all employer private insurance and health savings accounts to fund individually purchased insurance. Next is solvency. The plan implements the elements of a modified Healthy Americans Act or HAA. Here's the solvency advocate will defend the actualized comprehensive universal coverage. The Part 8, the HAA would establish purchasing pools of Americans regarding general private plan. The employer coverage would reduce the sustainability of the employees would offer coverage. They require all purchasing pools other than the honor they market the premiums who would be community rated securely not charge higher would be set for things based on private plans. The equivalent to the option of people to federal employers. Really means premiums and caution on the basis of income they provide, caution for preventing chronic disease and the names, but it also be enroll families and able to be able to retain the blame for breadwinners, jobs because unemployed, they'll be financed the federal subsidies. C would be budget neutral reform would replace the reliance on employer coverage. The plan would add minimize the adverse selection of public wrinkle the hijack of plans and theoretically benefits factor does limit the ability to ensure the cherry effect. The recently improved the ability of new pools to risk to effectively the blend usually medication and pays their still living benefits. The plan could be modified to establish new funding streams for the vulnerable population that will limit the outback as a it will be established and HAA is key to transition away from employer-based insurance. I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Premium surcharges, what are they?
Premium surcharges,
Yeah.
so the cost people are paying each month to get insurance.
Okay, and so if I don't want insurance, I just have to pay that?
No, there would be, I guess, a penalty for individuals who do not buy insurance, but the plan requires that each person buys insurance.
How? You just said it
would be a penalty.
Right.
Okay.
So the
How is that penalty imposed? Is that like a tax-based thing?
Yeah, I guess that it would be imposed
Cool.
similar to the tax
Great.
system.
Let's talk about the bioterror advantage. Do you have any evidence that says any terrorist groups are interested in bioterror now?
I think the card indicates that it could either be
Like a
rogue
specific
terrorist
group.
groups, but it also indicates
We
that
don't
countries
isolate
like,
specific
there
groups.
is actually isolations of like Iran, North Korea. They indicate that nation states have the capacity to acquire the technology. It also states that
Of course
rogue
they have the capacity
militant.
to do so. What evidence says Iran's developing bioweapons?
The Miller evidence actually does say the word Iran and talks about why they have legitimate capacity to do so and incentives to do so.
If a pathogen is engineered to cause extinction, why would people go into their neighborhood primary care physician to solve it?
Yeah, I think the Peterson evidence talks about why containment and early detection is necessary for prevention of those attacks.
But
So
like,
individuals,
it's a superbug. It's engineered to kill everyone on Earth.
yeah, but that superbug wouldn't.
It took us a
Enable to
year to make a
isolate.
vaccine for Ebola. Like, what do you
Yeah,
think we would
the
do?
Peterson evidence talks about why the medical industry would be advanced in a way due to universal insurance that would prevent those attacks from spreading.
Okay.
It's about that prevention and
Inequality
early
kills
detection.
democracy argument.
Yeah.
So our Gini coefficient score was 0.43 in the 90s. It is now 0.48. It has only changed by 0.05. We have been unequal for a very long time. It's like, it is a novice-y thing to be like, why haven't your impacts happened yet? But like, why haven't they happened?
Yeah, it is an obvious thing. The healthcare card indicates that costs. We have I think the Tolbert card talks about why healthcare inequality is unique currently because it's creating larger wage divisions than we've ever seen. So divisions between the top 1% and the 99%
Our Gini
is
coefficient score is 0.48. It was 0.43. It's like, those are objective facts.
objective facts that
They are.
don't take into account that wage inequality is different based off of health insurance, which is
But
all of what our internal link is based
overall
on.
perception of inequality is defined by Gini
Right,
scores.
based off of people maybe having an iPhone, which is
Whatever.
completely bullshit, but our argument is that
That's how it's
wage
calculated.
inequality is the
Your
most important factor for
democracy
that.
impact card is written by a chess player who seems to just be like footnoting democratic peace.
Yeah.
What data
Chess players are
studies
really
does he-
smart. I'd like to clear that up. Also, I do think that person is more qualified than you give it. It's about democratic backsliding, meaning other countries
What's the
don't see the
warrant?
American.
Like, what data do they cite?
What data?
Yeah.
Which author are you criticizing?
Kasparov.
Kasparov is just talking about American model of democracy that affects things like, I think the warrant
It's
you're
like, so
looking
no
for,
data.
the data you're looking for is that SEA, like Asia, they follow US model, which is why
Yeah,
they've developed the
it's not
SEAN.
data.
It is
I
data
have one
because it's
more- I have
talking
one
about
more
why
question.
people,
So
great.
separatism internal link, there are like two main separatist groups in Southeast Asia. The Naxalites, which are a Marxist Maoist like religious group in India, is fueled on poverty, and the Uyghurs, which are fueled on religious objections to Chinese rule. Why would they give a shit about the plan?
Because democracy is great.
Adolf wage lecture.
Oh, okay. You can use it if you want to.
Is it okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry,
So we're thinking-
it looked like you
No,
were
no,
kinda
it was
getting
funny.
it.
It did kind of work that way, so I don't
Yeah.
really care at all.
Okay, I need another piece of paper.
Yeah. Just one?
Can I get two?
We have a ton too, if you all
Yeah.
are kind of low.
Okay.
We're
We have a bunch of green though, so.
Sorry, you said, wages and then
Yeah.
prior to inequality covers whatever.
Yeah. I need to. Sorry. I just worked. You're good.
Okay, everyone else?
Yep.
The planning insurance and core state authorities pulls over the environment wheel 13 heavy federal hand will supersede decision regarding health from increased medical policy, increased social financial implications, state social rate, and easy choose of federals and that have unpredictable effects on these resistant to validation, the broken juice, fast rate, and governmental programs, social costs, social services, education, the environment, key to the grid, pass go 12, and clean electricity generation, take to the process, enable new efficiency for industry, grant the flexibility, one enable innovation, have the effects of mistakes, and market goes, carbon should remain conscious of the continued extension of the electricity industry, extinction, freedom, and 16, evolution, absence, and electricity with the and covers the entire planet genders when run out of communication with sea no water, access to food supply, hospitals, and operated by given for predators, societal collapse, topicality, NHI is mandatory government provision of services free at the point of delivery. Robert 13, the term national health insurance defines the list of comprehensive and essential services which the government mandates to cover all residents and to which every minimum is contribute all are entitled to care without the barrier of affordability at the point of delivery of service. The universal health coverage is something guaranteed the universal and national health insurance violation. The affirmative simply grants an option to enroll in and does not mandate expanded coverage. Voting issue 1 is a predictable limits. Our interpretation is both intent to define and exclude. They allow any voluntary program to cover any sector of the population. 2 is grant. They make all strategies conditional. Consumer choice is the only stable locus of negative offense is guaranteeing the public increases enrollment and a government insurance advantage counterplan. The United States federal government should establish a substantial universal basic income pegged to inflation, substantially increase subsidies for the trucking industry, requiring a substantial portion of the subsidies to be spent on increasing wages, substantially increase subsidies for the chemical industry, and create a military standby force tasked with rapidly implementing quarantines in response to pandemic outbreaks. Solved by Terry Miller 5. The military order to institute mandatory isolation quarantines of also containing a virus to go quarantine standby forces restore essential operation of biological contaminated environment, maintaining containment the importance of quarantine, supported by recent historical experience. Much of the learned from source and commentary. A commander can carry out effective operation military and quarantine requirements. States counterpoint the 50 states relevant some national entities should remove balanced budget amendments, legalize deficit spending, create state reserve banks for healthcare funding, and establish a state finance system of private health insurance requiring enrollment through premium surcharges and subsidized individually purchase state insurance at a rate substantially higher than federal subsidies for employer-provided insurance and health savings accounts. Souls better. Approach 9 states sees the initiative of health ideas spread rapidly from a conventional perspective. 50 states seems to stand the same, but from a focus on evolution, state by state growth, encouraging growth at the federal level, time to reform state by state progress momentum. Similarities will result from forward numbers of disease members of employees become concerned about organization, press Congress, federalization, Congress from Parliament, and posing an overarching federal scheme. The Supreme Court of Reserve to be read nearly when the infringement traditional state proper health and creation state issues repression judges not to sign me a legislative form to say the affirmative destroys the value of pharma R&D that fuels biotech startups, US markets, key Eaton, and Easton and 18. Some have suggested proposing price controls for devastating early hope of curing serious diseases, the high promise of attracting investors, generating money for research, strong promise of acquired productive attacking vaccine problems in medicine, cardiovascular mortality, cancer, disease, hepatitis C, lung cancer, next hormone disease, diabetes, drug resistant bacterial and viral infections, events in these areas will come into money. Keeps solving if US drug prices come into break out of control, will be a different story. Pharmaceutical R&D budgets could be slashed off. Pharma companies would have to reduce their R&D budget by 80%. The appetite venture company, a community for risky investments would shrink exponentially. Companies could also be depleted. Bioengineering advances would create a solve climate collapse and pandemic extinction. Bomb 13, the temperature increase become 2 more humans to survive. Bioengineering may be able to help the bioengineer designed to convert a carbon into biofuel could remove gases from the atmosphere, or humans could be genetically engineered to reduce CO2 output. Research may be necessary to create vaccines for pandemic. Specification established requires specifying intended benefits and source of financing data and candidate health insurance to be established. The development course that establish a reasonable person can ascertain intended benefits, the class of beneficiary, source of financing, and procedures for receiving benefits. Most case determined if a plan has been established. It's a voting issue. Hurts debatability through 2AC clarifications and Hurts advocacy by incentivizing argumentative evasion. Politics. This at Pompeo will be confirmed now, but it's tight. PC's keynote thumpers and healthcare policies straight off. Everett 316 in political calculus. Champ Trump should support Pompeo at the 14th Congress. Pompeo will fall short of being against any Democrats supported all failed confirmation votes are real possibility until the total announced with the calendar appears to believe the device of legislative fights over healthcare that define focus first year a completion of spending in immigration. Leave the White House to direct its energies to insurance and avoid any debilitating inter-party trolls. Instead, the White House is gearing up for a full-on push to get the GOP in line as we assume a tough fight. The Democrats make a show. One White House officials have predicted eventual confirmation. The Jeff Flake said his potential flip vote at 51-49. What's the possibility that there will be some Republican opposition? There will be drama. Pompeo solves every geopolitical threat. Gardner and 18. Pompeo ensure robust U.S. leadership will keep figuring defeating IS. The expensive experience working on Capitol Hill skeptical of the Iran deal will be instrumental to strengthen the deal. And around the strategy confronts development of a long-range ballistic missiles war for terrorism from Awesome as Bull. Pompeo will shape the records response to Moscow strengthening sanctions, bolstering the presence and supporting Ukraine a pivotal role in negotiation with Korea as well as challenging growing Chinese and Germany, overseeing the responsible South making sure the U.S. resist Iranian and Russian attempts to assert a foothold. Inflation. This the blind cause an expectation of inflation that causes interest rate hikes. Roman number 16. We examine most statistical and narrative evidence of military policy reaction. We find that the federal funds rate rises in response to benefit increase. The effect is very large, very fast, economically large, and highly statistically significant. Following attacks that the country's federal funds rate falls. The record of Fed policy discussion reveal the policymakers are very aware of the benefit increase and often view them as a recent attend military policy. Fed attempts to curb inflation would blow up the global economy. Law when any team global economic crisis due to a major economic policy mistake by the Federal proceedings like the rising interest rates, which would be the trigger of the burst asset bubble run. Asset price bubbles around the world at a high level has to be concerning. Such GDP is higher than 2008 could have another round of the Eurozone debt crisis. Global nuclear war. Thomas and 15 interdependence risk the constant conflict unbalanced dependency and transportation generated there. A trade wars increased the risk of conflict. Seriously anticipated nations declining when Western defense adopted appeal to adopt protectionist policy and refuse to temporary nuclear arms change the global economy. Also returns in ways that render the peace appearance with return the only factor protection from Oregon and unreliable substance lose credibility. Great advancement camel to cyber conventional war. Wage advantage. No impact to democracy. Most sub 16. The truth of conflict. The truth of conflict in nations can spurious account for econ democracy will not award as a development that creates contracting and this legitimate democracy. The impact of democracy is zero, regardless of how interstate conflicts measure martial peace. The statistical artifact does not exist among neighbors. Kasparov, impact is from a chess player from the Soviet Union. Taxes to solve inequality does not raise enough funds. Standard 16 taxing the rich will be we reach a point to diminishing returns. New central workers just the birth increase taxes the wealthy company by increased transfers have little effect on inequality. The top tax rate was raised to 50%. All revenue raised was redistributed to households who assume no change behavior. The tax hike the hike would raise 96 billion, which will allow a redistribution of 2,615 amount not significant such at least strikingly limited reduction. This would not bring government revenue. The rich will offshore their funds in response. Samuel 16. The taxation remains the most contested issues which may be motivated to move money offshore where it can be tracked. That could less revenue. The wealthier are making as much the result of a reduction in economic activity with less capital available, leading to lower rates of business formation and fewer jobs that will be bad for the lower wage earners. China, cheap labor, all cause of wage inequality. Amadeus 17. Inequalities blame cheap labor in China for exchange rates and jobs outsourcing. Corporations will profit ahead of workers maintain competitive as a result. The companies have outsourced traditionally higher paying union jobs. Their SES impact card is not a card. It's a Malaysian politician saying that Malaysia will destroy itself if it randomly goes to work against other countries, and the World War line is a hyperbolic World War I comparison, not an escalation war, and it also says ASEAN solves, but if fragmentation overwhelms ASEAN, that's inevitable. And 9, SEA has long been fragmented by ethnicity, religion, colonial history, and geography. It seems to be undermined by lack of common interest in agenda issues, growth and tension may act unilaterally. The region includes the most richest and poorest and diverse genders. These most challenges to cohesion, moderate inequality creates a credible threat of insurrection, which guarantees elite compliance with democratic norms that's key to spreading and maintaining democracy broadly. Hoolan 14, democracy inequality may force the democratization of masses more able to create a credible revolutionary threat. Middle income should be more likely to follow the distributed conflict path, unequal countries at middle levels of democratization, distributed conflicts, and the effect of inequality and the probability of democratization using a sample containing up to 123 regimes to find evidence consistent with how Boston middle income countries and foster democratization results are robust specifications that account for indigeneity, specifically true in wealthy countries. Handful 15, a redistributed series of formalized laws and traditions. The democracy survives in the cost of progression exceed the cost of toleration when the elite will defend the secret of democracy. Democracy should be unstable in poor countries, but in practical and wealthy ones, if there was enough wealth and disease to accept democracies and impose redistributive costs, this boils down to the question of whether those costs are greater than the risks of a coup. After all, coups can destroy lives and property in rich society, will turn all the way to tolerate democracy because the stakes are low as the wealth increases, the poor demand less redistribution, meaning that the elite would retain their economic status in a wealthier society. The elites can reconcile themselves to democracy. The affirmative creates a centralized EHR system that causes identities and Lambert 17 healthcare is a data research system with creatively desirable data. Every piece of information is field person identity. The records is actually found written hospitals imagine a centralized EHR central location where records we access information a ransomware attack and such style of information causes terrorism. Perry 11. All assets are connected against the use of a facility with use of stolen data, specifically to Al-Qaeda, September 11, 14. Bank accounts using different means to make stolen terrorists use stolen social security numbers to create false identity, corporation terrorists get much more money from this. Avoid watch lists and gain unauthorized access to entry points and such. One critical aspect of close anonymity of their travel documents are as important as opens goes nuclear givens 14.
No, just say it turns biotary, that's it.
Their environment impact causes by global pollution. Chemical companies have no incentive to solve for that because nobody is paying for it. No environment impact anyway. Career based extension risks are often mentioned by diversity. There's little evidence of local reduction. Poultry ecosystem needs to point to extension risks. The data at small scale. There's little evidence of diversity is even declining at local scale. So diversity defined by local diversity stay the same because species can after also we can replace local loss of diversity where half the local species stay the same. Will all be met for civilization, pollution, and supply. Weaponization decrease through wealth and cleanup emissions. The countries come circular waste problems. The consequences are immediate. The government's act before a catastrophe. Bioterror. We would respond to pandemics with free care. Solves their troubling Peterson 14. Their author is likely an attack. The U.S. will set up numerous distribution centers where all receive antibiotics without regard to insurance. The CDC responsible by the government. Services model for universal access. No impact for quarter 17 for mentioned infection. Rebuild human have to have extremely high fatality rates. Destroy your capacity to be extremely infectious. Have delayed symptoms making such fast shouldn't be impossible. None of their evidence says that any group has the capacity or willingness to do it now. The U.S. won't retaliate. Manischek 10 there or a number of reasons why the U.S. is not looking to use nuclear weapons make difficult for less important toxic the following biological weapons and proliferation benefits of restricting the role of strategic weapons to deter nuclear attacks that way the marginal production of countries' ability to send these biological weapons. The U.S. has efforts in place to defend against biological attacks. I'm going to read Chronic. The nuclear impact.
Yeah, I don't really care about that.
Okay.
The ACA solves bioterror, their author again, Peterson.
Increased insurance coverage equals access to healthcare. The ACA is already the largest reform in 100 years, but if the ACA does deliver, even if our homeland security is likely to improve.
Yeah, that's fine.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Pompeo DA, what's the warrant for why Pompeo de-escalates global political threats?
Yeah, so he's a competent diplomat. It lists a couple of specific ones that I can go into more detail about, but he's going to take the lead in negotiations with North Korea. He's going to be more hawkish on the Iran deal, which will cause them to become compliant.
All right. The PCR, what is Trump doing for PC now?
What is Trump doing?
Right.
He's talking to people about Pompeo. I also want to make clear, by the way, that our PC argument is not about Trump the person per se, but also about the people surrounding him. It's not just that Trump is lobbying to put
Right.
Pompeo or individually talking to Congress people or whatever.
So how does
But-
healthcare trade off with Trump's and I guess his advisor's ability? Because the card talks about why in the Congress it's like traded off healthcare debate. So why does that mean that Trump can't also discuss negotiations of Pompeo?
Our evidence says that the reason why Trump is able to mount a full-on press on Pompeo is that the agenda is clear of, quote, debilitating intra-party brawls such as healthcare.
So
To be clear,
Trump and
your
others cannot
app
balance.
your app is like the Democratic proposal that happened in an ACA
We know what it
debate.
is,
was-
so thanks.
right, but like if
the
Trump
Miller-
went with
the
that, then
other-
that would cause an
okay.
intra-party brawl, obviously.
The
because
advantage
Republicans would be
counterplan,
upset with him.
the Miller 05 evidence, underlined portion indicates that quarantines may not be appropriate in all cases. It also goes on to say, we will likely proceed arrival of additional support and formal identification. How does the counterplan solve? Because the evidence indicates that formal identification of diseases is necessary, which the counterplan does not give health insurance.
We would
Like,
aggressively quarantine.
I'll grant.
Aggressively
Sneeze,
quarantine?
Yeah, if
I'll
you sneeze,
grant
you go
you-
in a bunker.
What is an aggressive quarantine?
Yeah, if you sneeze, you go in a bunker.
I'll grant you
Are
that
you
like
kidding?
I'll grant you that if
Stop
there's
disease.
I'll grant you that if we don't know that a
Right, but
disease
that-
exists, we cannot quarantine it.
Your
However,
card
it's pretty
is
clear.
terrible, though. It says in the
It's pretty
underlined
good. It says
portion
that
that
the military is able to respond. In fact, the card is actually specific to bioterrorism.
Yeah, great, but it says in the basically conclusion that this might not be clear until a definite diagnosis is known. Okay. That's,
Like, sure, you might not be able to tell what the illness is, but you can tell that somebody is sick, which is
all
sufficient
right,
to trigger
next
a quarantine.
question,
That's
status
kind
of the
a point
counter
quarantine.
plans.
Conditional.
The NHIT, what apps topical under your intern?
You have to make it so the government provides insurance and nobody can opt out.
So
there's a
public
variety
option
of-
isn't T.
Public option is not T because nobody can opt out.
So what's T? Just single payer?
There's a lot of different single payer apps.
Like what?
Like, what do you mean? There's different
Example?
ones of financing, there's different, different packages.
Okay.
You can give everybody access
What
to-
Advantage Ground is different from those? Like, give me one example. A financing method has different Advantage Ground from all single payer.
So like, we read like 4 different ones at
People have read
Texas. We
advantages
read like
based on-
an advantage about gene therapy, we read something about rural hospitals, we read a thing about like doing population health through a different reference approach to cause them to solve food.
Elims of the NDT.
Harvard
There
read
should
an
only
advantage
be
about
different advantages.
Income,
No
inequality,
app
and
method.
progressive taxation. There's a lot of
Single payer is a
innovations.
revamp to a fifth of the economy. There's a lot to talk about.
Right, just, okay.
I'm sorry.
I did.
Like, I don't know if we should do that. I think we should just explain that we read some cards. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll take a look. Yeah. I know, then we just read, we'll just, yeah, yes, that's a great idea. Just that. Do you wanna just like, don't you explain like, this would be, I'm gonna specify this in the travel checks. Do you want to like suggest we thought of explaining that to establish something enough for you? Okay.
Quick question, net benefits to states are,
Pompeo.
sorry.
We stopped at, we used 144. So we have, 8, 16. Yeah, I'm so bad at math, it's so embarrassing.
It's something.
You remember that weird stuff.
How's y'all's NDT going?
Doing good.
And I got him
Actually, I'll
such a
take
cheap
a little bit
price during the draft, and he's a total keeper.
I mean, the one I asked for in that deal, I can't find.
We need to start counting down, so I don't have to do math all the time. That's embarrassing.
They'll have to make the deal. I think you have to.
You know, we're not gonna win, but I'm gonna sleep in bed, and that's really all I'm paying that. Like, I told this year, like, I'm going for broke, because I just want to sleep in a decent room.
I think we should run back the same.
The year before, with the good pool and
Just don't, we can put that, it's the same for yeah, it's just, like, you can see the internal, the bottom.
yeah, like, I spent one night before this college.
Gosh, I agree,
Like,
yeah.
we never win the pool in this.
Yeah, you're right.
Not helping.
So we use 235, which puts us at 725.
Yeah.
Well, I think so, because we agreed that it would be that one weekend, so we can move.
I think it's good time to start talking about it, because last year, all the stuff we wanted to vote.
Yeah.
We didn't start anything until.
Yeah. No,
No.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't realize you.
Yeah, we have 7:30, 7:25.
I'll turn it on.
No problem.
I think it makes sense, I mean, there's just such a good market for, those properties work so well.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
he's just an old dinosaur, just ignore him.
Oh, cool.
I live in the
We asked the same questions for ourselves.
DC, Maryland, Virginia, DMV areas.
That's true.
And exurbs as well.
Come down to Fairfax.
Yeah, I don't think I'm there, so. For life. You can.
Do you have this down? Picture of this?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Look at one area over there.
Of course, Decker's
Decker's still there, yeah.
there. You probably would have.
Not.
Yeah, we got some previous people.
So I'm just gonna forward your thing, Rob, about me looking before the date after that.
No problem.
What's your order?
Inequality wages. Bioterror coverage. T, mandatory. Establish spec. The state CP. The Advantage Campus Plan. Pompeo. Econ. Innovation. Federalism. Anybody not ready? Yes, there's an impact to democracy. It solves every existential threat. Immediate cooperation on anti-terrorism, warming, and proliferation by generating political linkages to make power projection effective. Their impact even does not assume election of Trump such global rise in populism, which makes international linkages uniquely fragile. No, taxes are not sufficient. Now that's our argument. The app generates other revenues by making employers provide reimbursement both to the employees and paying back to the government, which solves and funds subsidies. China's cheap labor argument is not our cause. It's uniqueness for the app because it's a reason why people put faith in authoritarian leaders. They want their wages to increase, but if they think the United States model doesn't work, then they won't. But they will only put their faith in authoritarians because they represent the polar opposite of democracy. Now, the ASON stuff, it's not enough. Their evidence is not assuming a rise in populism, which is something the app can prevent. Inequality mediated by inequality is moderate. Now, argument is again our argument. It's backsliding now, which means it's going to totally vaporize. That is why the United States model is uniquely critical because it keeps a level of democracy that is moderate and enables us to elect leaders that are not locked to be authoritarian. Now, the hack stuff at the bottom absolutely does not lead to the app. We do not create a centralized system. We do not create a centralized silo of data. We only expand the current practices. We only expand the current practices. I'm not even going to read the impact even to the disease advantage. The free care solves internally does not make any sense. It would be fundamentally reactive because the government would have to wait for a pandemic to start and then engage in providing free care. Our evidence says that is not sufficient because if you go on day 7 instead of day 2 of being hit with a bioterror attack, we can't engage in containment in fast enough time to stop it. Yes, there's an impact to bioterror. The evidence does not assume new technology, which means that there's a uniquely low threshold now. You only need a great level of knowledge of biochemistry to create a weapon that's capable of killing everyone. Yes, retaliation. Their evidence does not assume thinkers like Trump will be pressured by public opinion into lashing out, even if it's like past data. Now, the ACA tells bioterror argument again is our argument. It's collapsing now because of things like the IM preview, which is why the affirmative reinstates that. It also is not specific to the Bob and evidence, which says that if EGAPs persist, then they will cause some risk. Now, the off case, the first GPT argument we needed is that AHA creates a digitally financed NHI. It's comprehensive and universal 11 group. In 2006, HA establishes digitally financed as a private health insurance for all Americans. All Americans would have coverage, which comprehensive later coverage provided to federal workers because that is the Dutch model, providing 17 regulated insurance. The government sets national policy but leaves insurance to the delivery of the private sector. Now, those are a good example. People pick insurance companies are pool. That means that the IM is a form of mandatory insurance. He said the Dutch model is NHI. Never in 2010 now it's created an NHI guarantee all considered for our labor status based private companies of private insurance. Although this includes markets, the right to work, guarantee of coverage, counter duration. NHI includes private insurance. It's not just government run. Montgomery 17 NHI is illegally enforced, keeping the insurance of national population, like private sector combination. The NHI does not include government run contribution made by a taxation not optimal and after and outweighs the single payer only topic is getting still. This is the NDT. You should let us read this affirmative flexibility as a mechanism of argument innovation that gives new angles into a QGA and kind of my ground that solves all existing advantage areas and also they uniquely kill innovation to it or they kill incentive to innovate before that NDT now limits impact is comparably timing. Our model is just two affirmatives. Addition to 92 NHI would eliminate the current insurance and replace a highly regulated private government system. There's no ground laws plan of links employer-based coverage at 60% of all insurance company funds have employer-based coverage in the background of health insurance over 60% have coverage to employer contribution coverage to 84% of the premium and they would still get the characteristics on central financing and regulation of private market that proves there are sufficient limits of ground reasonability convenience traditional race of bottom because the states are the established argument. Do you have that right there? Cross applies here, the cross by the reasonability arguments, he cross-examinably checks. We have to find the applicable when he's self-examining. It's a mandate of limiting employer-based insurance establishments to greater parity. And also re-establish suggested concept of the EPA to create not a committee to bar the existing standing committee. Now, the states cannot find 58 to voting issue there. Developers no defense uniformity. One to 0 being no plus because the option of a community state and federal action to it's not real world. Uniformity is utopian. All three states never act together with shields and character. The authority thing is kicking the counterfund does not solve. You have to invest a lot of time on theory just to hedge on every debate. But I picture that from happening forwards it justifies abuse of permutation like permuting the counterfund. If you don't want to reject the team, let's advocate the permutation. Permutate both. Shield the link because the states would get blamed permutation to do the kind of fund solve. Paid states can't solve it. Your rights means only federal action to resolve employer-based coverage. Why did it until state census reports that 2.2 million lost their insurance employer coverage will melt away while state literature is battle for ages of the states to do the policy driving work consistent with the result of federal decisions outside the majority of states and federal government to include federal tax code, the rights action, these statements of federal legislation, restructuring and efficient tax rate, ensuring benefits of property coverage, the intent more right, universal coverage, reform out, matter of place, even if they solve, they link to the benefit because it requires federal action to give state authority specific to employer-based insurance. Number 15, state communication is not vulnerable to rise of preemptions, consider not prevent states or receiving outside employee contact with states cannot include with employer insurance can optimize innovation due to employees on their favor. The state could make this argument less competitive employer funds and be rely on research unless the Congress presses act these will fall and go to engage in the area of healthcare states cannot solve suit bigger 17 states about budget to revenue bar for the fiscal grab training. The ones don't already circle to act and credibility government in states can access true monopoly. Don't say tries to slash bidding doctors who are running everything producing shortage and reducing quality makes sense. States afraid to use a level reducing paragraphs that there's no older box. The states can never get to which pay the below wage to the United States. The evidence the United States held the advantage counter plan does not solve the app inequality impact is the devil in the world account plan because of price gouging and healthcare subsidies cannot keep up with that because big evidence says that they will collapse now and outpace every other spending indicator. Now make them read solid statements for all of those things before you answer them. UBI does not solve price gouging means that whatever the income is cannot keep up with downshifting of costs. It also doesn't solve our advantage specifically because the middle class is key. The UBI would only affect the lower class primarily, which does not matter because the middle class is already receiving wages that the UBI would cover. Now permutation bills, permutation bill plan, and any combination of plans, multiple condo advocacies are a vote for a failure to education, make the choice impossible because contrary positions kill adult choices, church thinking, and we lose ground on the not having solved the advocacy avoiding issue makes hash possible times use situation. We can do answers to whatever. The remark cards of Pompeo just had democracy impacts his internal after the bigger internal link. It's dying now because the State Department budget cuts. Pompeo withdraws from the JCPO and calls the war with North Korea. Books at 314 with Pompeo thinks would get a lot of tilts in policy to monitor the key insights from membership. He's been the strongest voice for those in North Korea trying to the U.S. and the deal. Pompeo were reasonably concerned because of how he's talking to the deals and the hanging balances of the multi-nuclear. Pompeo's 10 years towards the bit aggressive opening him the regime. Pompeo appears willing to do a very dangerous policy that causes global proliferation of rights to the like of human credibility most state being in 18 after trying to the JCPO could Trump the opportunity to send the JCPO stipulate higher impacts on nuclear transparency. Trump towards the JCPO and institutional conflicts of global proliferation by polar organs, including State Department spelling JCPO would have increased global mistrust of the U.S. economy and improvement instead of to negotiate JCPOs are overnight for you not right U.S. violations for damage credibility security council resolutions. I'll cut the evidence of resolutions that causes global nuclear war call and Stoke 13. If our Andorra nuclear weapons could fatally undermine the EPT acquisition could cause triggered arbitration to report the EPT could back out of the U.S. counter-proliferation efforts to other states, making the EPTs toothless in Washington lacks credibility and will to enforce full-on proliferation nuclear if Iran would become a supplier for any other state with assistance. These scenarios would have a way with proliferation and all the rival of the world to reach multiple competitions could complicate deterrence multiple advanced calculation of parties for rational prospects for nuclear war decrease the econ this had employer inequality insurance at DA destroyed international agreements that undergird independent because the U.S. has rejected itself as a beacon of market equality. There's no impact to a dresser in 14 ounces under the crisis lead takes use of force to rewards operations are great power complicated just otherwise the average of these bonds decline as some military studies for the recession screening by conflict crisis is not guaranteed production sounds for ethics solution. There's no link to it because of the solvency argument. I made a case we primarily from the plan to redirection of employer-based funds. Now the rate hike stuff is not the rate hike stuff is not true. Multiple rate hike stuff in Zandy 1228. There are plenty of things most contributors to temporary federal investment collecting to the next 2019. The rate will tell you 3% investors back only one next year in 2019. There's converse it will go off financial markets cover has to overreact. The plan solves growth in the short term. Rubric 2012 immediately increased economic security for families, immediately increased consumer spending, uninsured consumers, society money, putting out picture of the cover unexpected medical cost, free money for consumption, research, insured, significantly increased spending on consumer goods purchases, provide short rent stimulation to the economy, and the deficit is bigger internally, the rate hikes which plan solves crack activity. That does not want to inflation keep rising. Deficit maybe not restriction in current stipulation increase that was bad. Substantial inflation residency economy full capacity. The innovation decided I forgot to do this. Like we can see there's no impact to the environment completely. Takes out the impact of the DA, the only other impact dependent, which is internal the adaptation. Checks it was not like any full and 16 plants are much more adaptable to warming previously according to 3 years statement of region scientists speculate animals do not have enough machine global research and lately finding the workers more adaptable to previous abilities. Even though I can see that leads to evidence of link people in warming exchange spots. There's no link to this argument in the first place. We just expand existing private markets, which means we don't do price controls. And I thought federalism is there is no impact. The grid is resilient and sustainable. There's no impact. Clark 12, 2003, worst case everything for not really the robust. So the grid, chief of the U.S. government say that it tackles unlikely because the huge amounts of receiving this improved to be robust. The face of large material cost outages, effective mitigate policy to restore services, electric grid services, service interruptions regularly, yet down collapse, cycles, earthquakes, and hurricanes. The economy is not collapse, national is not affected. Normal means to plan with solid state waivers that solves the link. Why in 2010 HHA included provision of last states to get any accepted federal requirements that they could do a better job of covering citizens. The reasons that's not like tough and cost effective for states to implement approaches to health and safety and advocating non-stop for states to have the right to go their own way.
That's the internal and carbon innovation.
Okay. There's no innovation now with public bills saying it doesn't matter. Staff and 17, there are two research paths the pharmaceutical into most costs of pharma and employer marketing pharma. They claim it's $325 billion for revenue. Even if all research is beneficial with states would not have the industry, if the NHI took over clinical trials would do so, they cost only $32 billion. If it means the pharmaceutical would go away and become a small generic manufacturer. What is amazing how easy this would be because of narrow self-interest. Big pharma is pushing mostly the wrong direction by having the NHI take over goals. And public health would begin to come to the forefront. Pharmaceutical are floors that crops everything it touches because this plan would break the monopoly. Monopoly, and that was on pharma, if that was not clear.
Okay, we'll start from now.
I've got it. Well, I'm already working on it, but. Yep, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
35.
Okay, you good?
Yep.
So you have a bunch of inequality evidence about collapsing Southeast Asia that, so like, you read a piece, your terminal impact piece of evidence says that there is inequality, or there's like ethnic fragmentation between countries. Democracy, your internal link card, says that you resolve ethnic insurgencies within countries. How do those things connect?
So, because ethnic insurgencies spill over borders, a great example would be like the Philippines are facing.
Well, but that's not what your impact card is about. Your impact card is just like there's ethnic differences between countries. So
Yeah,
like there's
but
one
our
country is
argument-
predominantly Muslim and
Our
other
argument
countries
is
not.
that for those insurgencies to even matter, they would have to influence voters in home countries to do things like elect authoritarian leaders because those people are the ones who are persuaded by those who
But they
come
are,
in and say,
they're already electing ethnically leaning leaders. So in a world where, like,
they
right,
are
so
because of a global rise in populism / a distrust of the ability of the American democratic system to elevate the middle class.
how does
which is why we have
democracy
votes.
prevent electing ethnically leaning leaders?
Because
so like if a
the
country is
people who-
predominantly Muslim,
right.
why would a democracy
Because
prevent
the
them from
people who
electing a
elect
Muslim
those
leader?
Okay,
leaders-
it wouldn't not be like
Okay,
electing Muslim
it's
leader.
fine. Just
Yeah.
you should focus.
That
The
is what the
people who
impact card
elect.
is about.
Yes, I'm explaining. The people who elect those leaders are directly. They're the same who elect leaders who have nationalist or stoke nationalist tensions. They're the people who fight for like religious autonomy in their home countries are the same ones who fight for their
Okay.
ethnic states, which is our argument.
Got it.
They call it separatist
T,
prejudice.
your Deutsch 92 card, the one that's like 2 Fs, says that one of the Fs, is a highly regulated private system. What kinds of regulations are allowed?
Regulations that would do things like enforce the IM because it results in universal insurance, which is our interpretation.
Okay, but that's not what the Deutsch card, because the Deutsch card is talking about the Dutch model, and the Dutch model includes a variety of regulations. For example, a standardized set of plans that are allowed to be offered. It creates a system of
Yeah.
regional changes. It mandates a certain set of employer contributions.
All of those regulations are put into effect in the endpoint of establishing.
Okay, but
universal
what kinds of
comprehensive
regulations are allowed?
Any that results in universal and comprehensive insurance /
I don't think you have a card that says that. You have a card that says that a baseline for national health insurance is universal and comprehensive insurance. The thing I'm getting at is like,
we have evidence that defines NHI as being a highly regulated system. We've also defined
I
NHI
understand,
as
but
being
like I don't
one
think
of
you've
the
defined highly regulated is my point.
We don't need to. Like, there's a possible
But,
definition
like,
of
that's
NHI
gonna be
that
our
includes
limits argument.
regulations. Are those
It's
regulations?
like, how are you going to
must-
solve our limits argument?
Because those regulations, based on our prior definition card, must result in a universal and comprehensive system.
But like they can also result in other shit.
But our term includes two definitions of the same term, which means that they would have to result in universal and comprehensive coverage.
stipulations for waivers have to require the same point of coverage, is how waivers are determined. So therefore, it just should be the same kind of
You
coverage.
read this card that
Says
says you're
fucking
fine.
who is like, that's how waivers are administered if you
The
just
card
look it
says you
up.
turn it into vouchers.
The card,
But vouchers don't have to be spent. That's like the
that's
point
an
of vouchers.
explanation of a
It's like a
potential
pay or play
version of the system, which
yeah.
is not the app. But we don't
You
really
read a card about it, so it's like
35.
Google it.
We have appendix.
The stipulation for waivers is the same point of coverage, based off these here.
I'm only sticking around because they're gonna have barbecue for lunch. But Jeff's a vegetarian. Their variety of the conversation. You know, Thai Orchid is back open, so.
You mean Lotus Society?
Sorry, Lotus is.
Nice, nice. I know.
Yeah, now they have 2 locations open. Yeah.
Well, I know we're having for lunch and dinner, next time we're there. That's awesome. Yeah, I
Dude, my
mean,
son
definitely
lives-
doesn't-
so we just moved. And we worked on it.
Plan ensures a guaranteed mandatory provision of services with no fee at the point of delivery. There's two impacts. One is predictable limits. Their interpretation allows the expansion of any voluntary program to any segment of the population, plus makes the topic bi-directional by allowing acts to state government bad and claim advantages based on implementing less restrictive healthcare policies than the statutory limits that we guess. Their battle of clashing, which is the only product game to rate. There are 280 versions of the tax credit Apple loan that's progressive during 6 months. HCC beneficiaries have multiple coverage options, 288 different healthcare options are available. Second is ground legal, negative strategy fundamentally. Technically because it advances consumer choice to survive to the market. Negative advantage model, the good and fair debates. The first argument is they don't create a government healthcare program where participation is mandatory for all residents. That's the clear bright line set by the Roberts evidence. They are anti-topical. Status quo government programs are more restrictive than the plan like Medicare and Medicaid, which just makes the voluntary option of signing up for private insurance a little bit easier. Subsidizing private arrangements is the opposite of NHI. That's immigrant anyone national health insurance residents rather than subsidizing private arrangements. The government's great. There are public insurance programs that citizens are required to join. Employers are required to contribute directly to providing public insurance governments, taking credit responsibility. NHI programs are compulsory, not voluntary. Their explanation of their penalty mechanism in the Trozics was that they would tax people with a penalty. That's the same thing as the ACA. That is not a penalty and does not guarantee universal insurance because the public can lawfully choose to pay the tax and not buy insurance, which means they are not universal. There's a court case about this, Dennison 12. By a vote of 5 votes, but not to see this committed to buy insurance rather as a tax if they don't send healthcare. It's not going to have consumers. Only those who opt out of the court tax recession is the clouded power factor that will be introducing people to buy. They want to pay the tax. They fully follow the law. That mandate does not get not a guarantee or business those subject to the mandate. Most lawfully forego insurance on American subject to the mandate to pay the tax. People are too poor to are exempt as are other groups. Their arguments about the Dutch model are irrelevant because they still include private insurance, which links to all relevance. They said the Dutch model is a negative counterclaim ground, not affirmative ground because it applies little of the topic. There's an infinite number of permutations of private insurance arrangements or things you can cover, which makes negative ground fundamentally untenable and impossible. Counter interpretation still links to limits. That was the argument. I explained about the app ground of the limiting argument. The point of the topic was to engage in focused debates over big healthcare reform. Their complaint is inconsistent with community consensus in the core controversy in the topic literature. There were small resolutions and they didn't win. Requiring the affirmative to engage in large-scale changes good. It generates clash and locks in core negative ground like the economy. The limits is that their interpretation outweighs an explosion of subset cases would create topic anarchy. This is magnified because there's not a modifier like substantially in the resolution. There's 25 different single pairs. Lou 17 we identified 25 proposals for single pair plans for general legislative databases. The rules typically call for a wide range of conformity include all changes across the financing, including purchasing and delivery of healthcare services. The limits tiny argument their Deutsche evidence says that heavily regulated plans are topical, which begs the question of what those things are. Obviously, like sort of limits is that there's not just two topical plans because the private insurance market is limitless. The potential of a permanent ground. No, there is ground loss. We lose all this as with private insurance and the government taking over the insurance market, which is the majority of net ground on this topic. The central financing mechanism does not preserve ground because of the argument I just made. Reasonability is arbitrary, causes judge and revenge, which makes debates, which takes the debate out of the debater's hands and is worse. The economy DA will concede there's no impact to it. The pharma DA will concede there's no price controls and no environment impacts. There's no offense. The federalism DA grid collapse causes extinction and civilization destruction because it causes nuclear meltdowns and collapse of food supply, which makes it impossible to live, turns everything. That's the Friedman evidence. Their first argument is that actually federalism's model solves global war. That's Calgary's 95 federalism. I can explain this, but why do we not have Northern Ireland, Chechnya, or Quebec home? There's something that's done where everyone keeps prosperity and freedom. The federalism helps with upgrade and bloodshed war. The international, subnational federalism has swept across the world. This is due to the passage for the emulation over American federalism because that story. The grid is fragile. Which answers their first argument. That's well, 13 nations aging, multiple good action, making long-term collapse, growing likelihood of it's not if it when multiple connects to one bill to another, and a cascade of solution deals with policy and tech. The no link argument. They've read this card that says that people would be able to opt out of the individual mandate, which is the way their mandate is actually enforced. If states can opt out of the individual mandate, which they would obviously all want to do because nobody wants to be forced to buy insurance under the penalty of a tax, the app does not solve anything. Their evidence why do 10 states to get an exception from certain federal requirements, such as the individual mandate. But if they can't get an exception, that would obviously be worse. One, they don't have the plan text does not say HAA, so this card defining what HAA says is totally irrelevant because it's not about the plan. The plan intrudes on state police powers because insurance is a state power. Any federal involvement links. That's letter 10. Federal health insurance rules allow uniformly consequently with no state opt-out. Federalism on state cannot adopt or requirements that conflict with federalized state law will be preempted in federal law. Significant insurance states authority and discretion. Insurance regulations long considered within core state police powers. The federal government would gain substantial regulatory authority in this space over state regulation. Federal funding still links because it upsets the balance of power. That's grade 13 of political prisoners law. Now pressure state governments to do what Washington County by itself to say legislatively they must expand Medicaid. The government dependency and federal funding fundamentally changes the balance of power. Even more threatens the very foundations of federalism. Once a bunch of federal funding, Washington owns power from the constitutions, enumerated powers. The plan emboldens the HHS to overreach more in the future. That's 1016. CMS enlarged the agency's authority to pursue its chosen program because each agency overreach causing the significant difficulty in their already fixed part of more widespread channel within CMS and HHS to expand authority every time the agency proceeds to act and access of actual statutory authority. It becomes easier for the agency to do this again. The next time the agency's self-organization can reveal the agency's permanency to overreach further and further, both the agency to overreach more in the future. Reasons to unchallenge all parties subject to regulation should take notice. Federal health intervention shills state innovation. That's Adler 11 signaling agrees benefits provided by regulation that healthcare conduct defended adopts particular practices may signal state and policy making the rounding benefits on the federal levels not necessary. The potential first federal intervention democratic capital state policy initiatives of continuous and short adoption of optimal, safe, responsible, troubling possibilities that federal eventual discourage to adopt federal policy can discourage state innovation, the adoption of federal floor be actually meant for their future upward progress, federal and eventually reduce likelihood of state action at all. Mark the card at all. The next, the wages advantage. I'm going to drop down to the democracy link term because it's totally dropped by the 2AC. Inequality bolsters democratization and makes existing democratic arrangements more stable. They've conceded the whole evidence that intermediate levels of inequality result to create a credible threat of revolt because people become angry about poor living standards and lack of social welfare. This puts pressure on leaders to democratize or maintain existing democratic institutions because they are concerned about their power and need to appease the masses. Somehow, literally no response from the 2AC. Unless they produce a card answering our methodology, consider the term dropped. Our author uses an empirical study of 123 countries and finds the relationships robust and not affected by exogenous variables. When faced with social unrest, elites reflexively become more democratic to stay in control. They read a modeling argument about how inequality spills over globally, which means we solve their global democracy impact. That's really 14. The population has incentive to demand democracy. The ruling elites are willing to start repression because the cost of redistribution is relatively low. They show democracy's inequality affects democracy by raising the stakes of holding office. The massive trade about the democratization caused by generating social unrest when faced with possibility of revolution being led to offer democracy because under the situation the interests are at least protected by the rule of law. These findings are empirically verified and robust regardless of different ethnic or cultural circumstances. That's Eisenhower, Robinson 6. Level of distribution of income or endogenous structural economy help to determine the creation and consolidation of democracy. The ideas present are inconsistent with case studies that historical material the mainstream approaches also consistent with observed correlation between per capita income and measures of democracy. These results not depend on the creation of nature of political entities, even the political competitor along the lines of ethnic groups that are great capital intensive has more consequences for democracy. The greater capital intensity tolerance is the desire of larger groups to redistribute. I'm going to concede the democracy impact argument. We're straight turning me if they drop the link turn. I'm going to answer the rest of the external impacts. Their Asia war thing is stupid. It's from a Malaysian politician who's worried about Malaysia. It doesn't say that there will be a causal change in war. It's hyperbole and obviously alarmist. There's no Asia war because other institutions that are not ASEAN solve basically 14 Asia's not about to tumble into a war. China's America's trading partners. China is willing to trade China makes a reason to be optimistic. Washington and Washington have arguably recognized, but they haven't taken wide range of institutional links that lower their spelling out of control. And like 1940 comments that the global interaction and cooperation of Asian states have created broad range multilateral institutions to improve trust fund 15 bodies of building infrastructure for peace in the region. That these have been controlling managing crises. The separatism impact is garbage. Uyghurs and nationalites are growing now because of rural poverty and religious tensions. They obviously don't care about U.S. policy. Neither does the Chinese government because their tensions are religious. The Chinese government doesn't like that people in the Xinjiang province are Muslim. Their card says that 4 things cause separatism. They only solve one of them, the blue highlighting. Velasquez 14 where these central build forces emerging now. They seem to be for reasons that versus knee-jerk reaction against excessive and unregulated globalization, which the ordinary system lost no identity, therefore appeared in localism. Globalism, the second is the fact that most so-called nation states are actually a multinational, third is worldwide fair national governments. Those who seem confident and able to deliver. Fourth and finally, there's simple self-industrial provinces in the country where the constitution obliges them to help war ones that can't make one and those to keep all the money for themselves. The Asian collapse is inevitable. They consider that fragmentation is happening for other reasons, which answers their backsliding key arguments. They're not going for the environment stuff, so the rest of it doesn't matter. The bioterror advantage at the top, they consider that we would respond by giving out free care. It does solve because it treats diseases at the point of delivery quickly. The CDC would immediately set up centers to give people the care they need, which sufficiently solves their internal bioterror. If a bioterror attack would cause extinction, obviously people going to their old primary care doctor would not solve because they would not be able to produce a vaccine quickly. Not the Ebola crisis groups that took us over a year to put a vaccine into the pipeline production. They would not be able to solve a disease that is genetically engineered. There is no impact to bioterror. There's no evidence that the groups that are pursuing bioterror now. Second is that they will use WMD, Paris, Boston, bombing Manchester, every recent example groups that are focused on conventional attacks. Third, tech hurdles. That's the one that's the evidence. And Keller 13. Use of biological weapons targets an assessment of whether Nazi act would have capabilities to likelihood of assessment attacks very low. This constraints makes assessment like the technology never found in aerosols and passive biological attacks found the capability of most Nazi actors that when pattern team made a attack and effective no impacts. That's led to 14 bacteria they made a concern with mass casualty attacks. Now this manipulated biological disarmament and non-proliferation acts. There's the risk of large-scale bacteria. Because almost backed by historical evidence attempts for a small scale mark the card. There are no retaliation managed evidence such our nuclear posture is not going to respond to bioterror. No Trump tier retaliation. That's Miller 16 day. Predator Trump will confront the gap between force and heat that faces crisis and constraints that event. In Trump's case, risk aversion rather than risk readiness will prevent response to ISIS. The Trumpian response would be closer to Obama than Bush. The ACA solved because they gave a massive amount of uninsured people care, which sufficiently solves their argument about coverage gaps.
So the only cards I marked are Lensos and that federalism thing. I'll send those out now.
single payer. It is not exhaustive. It says that these different types of single payer have all identified different ways to address things like comprehensive benefits, patient choice providers, cost sharing, whether or not that should happen, role of private insurance, provider guidelines and standards, periodic reviews of the benefits. It actually just goes on and on. I don't have time to read it all. How do you solve limits?
Which, like, there's a central mechanism, which is the government taking over private insurance.
That mechanism
and
can be
offering a
enforced through
comprehensive-
multitudes of ways. Your argument
you're
about the
right.
app is that it...
Dude, this is such a terrible, like, the card says there's lots of ways to do a single payer, but they all share a common characteristic of just cannibalizing the private insurance market, which obviously guarantees that I can read DAs and counterparts.
Our
like that.
interpretation is the app has to be a form of highly regulated
Oh,
private
but
insurance. What is the
remember
distinction?
when like the 2AC said single payer is way too over limiting, so like if you're gonna be like single payer is not limiting enough, like what is?
No, it's just how do you solve your own limits impact? Like
The
you
card
already-
says there's a diversity of things to debate about within single payer, but it is asinine to say that single payer doesn't
What is the
solve limits
distinction
because there's
between
different ways to do it.
arguing about a diversity of ways to enforce a penalty or tax / arguing about a
The
diversity
distinction
of ways to
is
enforce
that you give people a choice as to whether or not they want insurance, which fundamentally screws up all negative ground because you make negative ground dependent on consumer choice to buy into insurance or just pay the penalty. It's like an infinite permutation of like ACA apps, public option apps, things that rely on voluntary buy into the market. Which
So
are
like you should
all-
have links to regulated markets as well as like complete
We do have links to regulated
Then
markets,
why
but
didn't you
people,
read them? Like,
the
those
public
should all
option
apply.
wins debates on like, our public option is weak, it's not that regulatory, it doesn't, it's like it only takes the sick people, so like it doesn't impose massive price controls, it doesn't bargain, it's like, that sucks, that's bad for the neg.
Okay, this all seems nebulous. I guess what is the difference between tax and a penalty in terms of the limits argument you attach to that?
The difference is like, a penalty is topical because it's like, you put someone in jail if they do not get insurance. A tax
So
is different because the NFIB case, and it's just like people can choose not to pay the tax and go
You
and live
put
their lives
someone
without
in
insurance.
jail if you don't get insurance, so the app would have to defend that if people don't
Yeah.
utilize single payer, they go to jail.
Or just like the government just gives everyone insurance without the option of saying no.
So-
Either of those things. The
But
difference
you have
is,
just said that if you like don't pay a tax, that does not
that's
mean
one way to impose a penalty.
that
But like,
tax is
there's
one way to
a
impose a
distinction
penalty.
between penalties and taxes that is clearly defined in NFIB.
That makes no sense. So if a tax
Let's
can be a
also
penalty,
read this
the
out
app is a
earlier.
tax, why is the app not a penalty?
Sorry?
If a tax can be a penalty and the app is a tax, why is the app
A
not?
tax cannot be a penalty.
There was no criminal
you just-
prohibition on
geez,
non-insurance.
You just said the opposite, but
No,
that's
I
why
did
has to
not.
be
I said
so-
the NFIB case made a clear distinction between a tax and a penalty, and said the ACA was not a penalty, ergo it was constitutional on Commerce Clause grounds. Topic 101.
Okay. The impact to the grid, how does it happen / the impact evidence says like if we didn't have electricity anymore, like bad shit would happen. What about the app causes electricity, all of it to go away?
Our evidence says that updates to the grid depend on robust state innovation and upgrades, which will collapse if state powers encroach.
Yeah, all electricity gone.
States counterplan, advantage counterplan, Pompeo, spec.
You said advanced counterplan after states?
States not advantage counterplan.
State.
Everyone good?
No. 10 seconds used, so we're at. Yeah.
I don't know.
We were at 5:45, so.
I didn't write it down.
5:35.
Alright, everyone good?
Yeah.
Okay. Now going over the counterplan of when Russell proves the federalism link, where they reject the argument of the team in all theory issues. 50 state the ad is good, one is reciprocal, the FPS, the entire federal government uniformly taking action, obviously not realistic either. Be somewhat topic literacy, 216, one, you know, understand contemporary health policy, absent detailed examination of federalism and governmental relations, implementation, research, critical, real world, the sweeping healthcare policy is not happening at the national level, focusing on states is more realistic, key to net ground, provides a universal generic and bolsters splash for making it further justify the federal government future academics, learning about the states is critical, Watkins, well focusing on state governments have federal methodological advantage, state policies worthy of analysis, and increasingly polarized Washington governments will like to take a more important air negative topic is making the FS structural advantage also not reason to reject the team, the conditionality debate, negative flexibility, or other, the advantage counterpoint, conditionality is good, negative flexibility, as fixed books debate, that means lead options, conversation, reaction, extension, ground information, policy, multiple options, worst to the efficiency, best answers, which books the debate, increase critical thinking, logic, improving the counterpoint, balance, improve the plan is good, logic outweighs, because key to making portable, so meaningful for ideological flexibility, only way to read a counterpoint and decay in the same realm will result in community schisms, skews, or inevitable T violations, and a case defense or no risk is the next job to generate time and balance. They should have to defend opportunity cost any other interpretation artificially insulates the after testing theory interpretations or arbitrary and self-serving. They always move the goalposts to generate cheap wins, divorce from a substance solvency advocate theory, reject the argument of the team, inventing a plan to key to creativity and responding to arguments on the fly, which is a good skill. Pompeo just had effective diplomacy as an impact where U.S. faces the multiplicity of geopolitical challenges that can become existential threats: Iran nuclearization, Russian aggression, North Korea nuclear belligerence, Syria, and Chinese diversion. That's the Gardner evidence. All those hotspots escalate and cause extinction. They never had deep into the original impact, so it categorically outweighs Freeman 14. We live in a strategic fluidity, geopolitical fault lines are emerging. Ukraine, Russia, the Middle East, and Sino-American relations will benefit from crafting relationship between great powers and new types of relations might enable a great best relationship in relation to common adventure, although there's more conflicts and nuclear and annihilation for all those who take part of it, and he'll solve Russia. O'Hanlon in 18 Pompeo is smart and has a good relationship with Trump, the better challenge for policy. He also believes he has like behaves like a thug at home. We need to accelerate our efforts to push back, especially when we need to explore security arrangements that will lead to compromise with Moscow. We need to develop a complex strategy, push back, flexible, and creative thinking. Trump is launching has been largely stuck. It's time to lose the new constraints. The Trump is bright and promising new leader for Foggy Bottom. He represents to choose new individuals to lead his foreign policy team. The rank is now always their trend. Star 17 war against North Stanley to produce ozone losses unprecedented in human history. Competition where wars with Russia. And it is built on private response of what ages from radio. Poland, Russia would retaliate for war conducting a 12 testing under domestic circulating crowd. The leadership believes the worst possibility situation brought with nature, which is the possibility to conflict with Russia. The Pompeo bad turns. There's no uniqueness for them. Tillerson was spineless. He couldn't get anything done, and he clashed with Trump. There's only a risk that Pompeo will be a better negotiator. And all of the evidence says that Pompeo is aggressive. But the reason that Trump picked Pompeo in the first place is because Trump himself is aggressive. So there is only a risk that he can inject the administration with needed competence, which is the Gardner evidence. The term is descriptively wrong. Hawkishness does not automatically equal war. If coupled with democratic competence, only an incompetent and hawkish Trump can. That's Hello in 321 war. A cloud watches him to life. Pompeo only could expect another series of military expedition. Mr. Pompeo will not try to wheedle into war with Iran, North Korea, or Alberto Pompeo is hawkish, but in the sense that Trump is hawkish, which is tactical and verbal, not of the bomb if it moves, bomb if it doesn't, a variety. Not even neocon and Chief Crystal are calling for another go at shock and honest. Hard to imagine Mr. Pompeo actually trying to persuade Trump that anti-interventionism on which he ran for president is actually a bad idea. He's also a great diplomat, which solves. Here's a card from Samantha Power. It also solves self-power, and a 315 public and revitalize American diplomatic corps, abuse troops and achieve their commission to avoid addressing the underlying cause of conflict. Diplomacy is the best way to ensure peace. The foundation and make the U.S. more visible as under shells and the most reclusive secretary of the critical diplomatic nations and the nuclear state of North Korea. Diplomacy is like the stock market confidence begins confidence in peaceful and transition in Zimbabwe, ceasefire in Yemen. When a positive effect of Europe has brought a drop in the sending influence of the U.S. Pompeo could help us retain the attractive places and better restore bipartisan support for diplomacy, soft power, solves global war, humanity, and 14 there will be a scandal for influence to soft power ways to peaceful countries, secure full vacuum created by just American policy, such as place good, a range of challenge resistance Russia's book as America's image meeting still so instability, a reshape the world, and a scenario is Trump seeks to show up Americans who plan to balance military power, U.S. nationalism, unleashing a plunge the world in conflict. We have on the edge of catastrophe. The no-code war turn. This is wrong. He's key to deterring them. That's the one and see evidence. We explain that in the overview. Specifically, he solves negotiations which deter war. Thesis and 316 with Pompeo Trump, a suit of a trusted advice who can benefit the summit with Un. Pompeo's job is to make make sure Trump understands North Korea has no plans to develop weapons. Sometimes the Trump is absurd. Direct media can only be the only way to convince North Korea that Trump is serious about taking military action. We've been getting any good info. Space media is a chance for Trump to tell him. I'm not only my predecessor on the same well, saying Trump is serious for for military action. This is far better than letting him hold American cities hostage. No good is in cause expansion. 17 even no good develops the capability to develop nuclear weapons. Market still fine. Still wouldn't be an existential threat to be devastating for the but the U.S. will still be around. Has the strongest military backwards important to keep them in context that they really pose existential threats. The Iran stuff. Their evidence is bad. The Mousavian card says that Trump has already given an ultimatum and they didn't read any evidence that without Pompeo, Trump would not follow through with that ultimatum. There's no scenario for an Iran. In fact, Iran itself doesn't care about the threats. They didn't trust the U.S. in the first place. Wrote us in 314. Iran displayed down the potential benefit on its nuclear deal of the appointment of Pompeo. Saying the changes internally. Yes, matter the changes on we've witnessed her as someone developers who adapt their own position. The U.S. will not be trusted. But the Iran deal is bad. They will cheat and get a nuke. Pompeo's approach is the right one. Rubin in 18 not only to the JCPOA of all short of country growth president also failed formally getting to ratify the NPT rather than establishing of the restrictions along with acquiesced about the 130th most restrictive inspections. A debate about whether Iran studs violate high just how full of loopholes does not prevent Iran from experimenting. This means that Iran have access to international skill nuclear program fully funded with restrictions and advanced centrifuge. This is good that Trump about JCPOA is the world's deal of negotiation. Trump's investment to require focus on how to continue to counter and Iran on the verge of a nuclear breakthrough. And the JCPOA sunset triggers their discrediting arguments. The deal sucks and is not working. Makes nuclearization easier. Late 17 experts And foreign officials acknowledge that the deal is followed around house will be free to build up as nuclear ways of social intention and reduce the time that we need to produce enough fissile material for nuclear when the agreement to limit the stocks of uranium will expire around to erect an industrial skill nuclear program. Everybody reasons realize that the deal is not a deal that Iran has continued to test ballistic missiles, won't allow inspection of military sites, telling ambiguities around negotiating the deal only after the U.S. imposed sanctions.
This then prolix defense.
There's no impact to attacking Iran, which is what would happen if we withdrew from the deal. We would decisively win and get diplomacy solves drawn and brought a conflict thrown again. 12 none of that outcomes is free term the U.S. could do much to mitigate Iran would avoid starting conflict, including destruction of the regime, and targeting the U.S. operation make clear that its interest in destroying Iran's nuclear program, not only throwing the government to many red lines around responsible for glue, attacking missiles like the soon taper off Washington could reduce Iran to follow the path of Iraq and Syria, which Iran was starting to work in Syria after Israel struck the nuclear weapons reactors, even if Iran did not did cross Washington's red lines. The U.S. would still manage the confrontation. That card is marked a confrontation. No prolif impact. Mueller 16 for a decade there's been a long but prolif has been far slower than predicted. Weapons don't take advantage of the effects of prolif that is taking place have been denied those who acquire the weapons to use them to sow their egos to deter real or imagined threats to prolif to large important countries owned by monsters. There will be little time to apply military force to prevent further prolif. What seems required is watchful patience. At best, they win a spat of random conflicts, but the countries that can cause extinction, which are China and Russia, will not get drawn into this absentee to right confrontation, which means that only we access a scenario for terminal impact.
I set up the card at page 2.
We have 7, 30, 25. I know we should have to try to change it. Assuming certain observations extend to
It is because lit on it. There's definitely cars on both sides.
Sure, yeah.
Do you have a better one that I can substitute out any of that?
Well, you always like the jacket.
See, the way, just like in when we took the class, that's where I started. And so, because that's also like how I introduced into a lot of concepts. And your class was typically all debaters. Now it's just all commentators. Yeah. Well, okay. You sound okay now?
Yeah.
All right. I don't know. I think so too. I don't want to do like resin jobs. Policies and something.
No, definitely.
So, okay. All right. We'll get the claim on
Yeah,
tell them
we
later.
need-
With Jenna Dyer.
Yep,
Okay, I didn't even think you were in here, so I was just sitting here, but cool. Stand. The order is the bioterror advantage, wages and equality.
Sorry, I got
Yeah, T, Pompeo, and Pompeo, and then federalism.
What is the case, sorry?
Bioterror and then inequality.
One second.
No problem. Sorry if it's like in the way of the camera, but.
Just 1 second.
Good?
We'll continue to unpack the power trades and inequality may just be answered that there is a longer time frame for our impact where revolutions take a long time, but the opposite is necessary because wage inequality leads to structural disadvantage to the U.S. and American model. Therefore, that perception is necessary to not undermine other countries. Our evidence does cite the sense of the SEAN is necessary because those countries are already backsliding now. Therefore, uniqueness with our direction because authoritarian states are rising in the status quo. Therefore, their evidence is assumed that rise in populism and paramilitaries. Therefore, global cooperation with the SEAN is necessary to continue, but the U.S. democratic model is necessary for that. So yes, there is a separatist impact because the U.S. exportation of its models necessarily wage equality is the only thing I was told that they can see their own like the T. First top of a plan is not the same thing as the ACA mandate. The HAA evidence here and the 1AC defines our model that it just leads to everyone requiring getting insurance. And FIP doesn't apply to our case, so we do need it. The individual mandate is a form of mandate requiring insurance penalties don't matter, or else they make everything untoppable, including the public option, but prefer reasonability because only resolution burdens for the weird T. They increase the intervention by forcing you to pick a version of the topic that's supposed to be a better model. We set a reasonable limit of topics, so including few more assets and a reason to vote negative offense, defense paradigm leads to negative, always defending the world to exclude one more app. Therefore, the only topic of worship is single pair. So question, what kind of advantage and integration, even if there is different versus single pair, all those advantages come down to the same question, but extend to our counterintuitive. We have two components, NHI's government guarantee of universal comprehensive through financing, pooling, and this must be enacted as a new insurance. The background outweighs the net ground. Public insurance is a single pair or public option that forces sale to base because there's a limit to the way we innovate given the small advantage grounds are limited. Their topic just rehash disease and economy debates, which mostly counterplan solves. And generics can turn at flexibility at the mechanism level is key to give new angles to deal with the arguments. We solve limits and force big changes. Two reasons. One, highly regulated markets give them private insurance. The good arguments. We exclude strictly market approaches because there's no government guarantee of insurance that's spark finance or administered by the government. And we limit employer health insurance. That's 60% of all private insurance in the U.S. They have not addressed that. That solves negative ground because through all asking to be significant deviation established text that excludes that merely operationalizes quotes to fix the state. Therefore, we do change the status quo. Established text that HAA meets a blender system. Rather than creating a new structure of the ability to announce by living layer policy to the top of revealing patchwork. The other place for Medicaid for all the HAA is seen as disruptive. Other status quo regular markets are far-reaching parties. We can take one far-reaching purchase than the other. This is the current employer-based insurance. The U.S. could rely on public insurance or on other rate. The only argument they really have going through this single pair is the best, but over-living the topics only single pair is imprecise and abstract debate from the lit. Turns right back Joss. Eighth, there is no point in any single pair systems in every country. Finance is carried through a mixture of private and out-of-pocket factors. Are also all their finance arguments they make teams are disincentivized to run those from the single pair. Silly to pigs out of it. Therefore, the app will not be committed to Pompeo. Just yeah, Pompey, no. The Pompeo cuts the U.S. for a drop from the Iran deal, which sparks Iranian plug, makes the Middle East a hostile for rapid escalation. Also, none of their evidence assumes our specific term that indicates that Pompeo allows rapid proliferation because only the plan solves these structural reasons other countries are proliferating. The impact is short term because he is hawkish, provides discourse with Korea. Our evidence assumes that he plans to remove from the GCPO. That was unanswered. That's key because Trump right now will not remove from. That's the motive on evidence with the 1NC. 1-2AC. The Trump is currently opting to extend the deal because it's key because it stipulates the highest demands on nuclear transparency, which is why it's key to proliferation removal emboldens allies and also emboldens North Korea. Therefore, that's a shorter term impact because perception. Therefore, our impacts come first. Second, it also ruins the UN. They've conceded their arguments that ruins global cooperation because the Security Council relies on those allies. Therefore, Pompeo removes himself from which they have not answered for. Reject their arguments. They're all surface level analysis that no Pompeo's civic worldview is to rely. Just on the consider like the same like the Boosie is not the law when you want to think of the Bobby Old trends the right take the second report this diminished to moralize and dealing with the personal hemorrhaging relations find the miniature of the CIA State Department different to this and Pompeo's views that they are much closer to Trump than foreign to the lines as much as the hearings specifically Pompeo guarantees no deal revision in future relationship with Trump constrains him from doing anything else with the Trump's worldview show it is that the 13th to consider their round to the European NATO issues that they chose and even was allegedly constructed that the deal was impossible that Pompeo was in unlikely deals possible the allies hoping the Trump Pompeo make a different position hold their breath and one wonders how long the Trump Pompeo relationship will last if Pompeo allows any daylight between him and himself the Iran deal arguments Pompeo's carried out Trump's wishes to wreck the deal when Trump in Arkansas 2014 when Trump explained why done pillars and dickers and the Iran were at the top of the Pompeo has consistently portrayed Iran as the focus of his evil Middle East and world after Pompeo is more in love with the president's position than the leader who just the focus is Iran's general attitude to Pompeo please don't die out of his belief Pompeo's the Trump once I think the president more comfortable than ever with the pushback against the regime Pompeo's likely to more power influence care prefer Pompeo's public comments over their effective deal each of the Pompeo secretary could spell bad news for Iran Pompeo like Iran to the ISIS he also has thrown secretary Iran's efforts roll back in nuclear also discourses keeps as a perception question which is where our impact or short term. No, they said no problem. Like yes, nuclear weapons don't destroy great power. Wars. Your evidence is biased. Let's assume new historical evidence and scholarship to the research of challenge. The view that militaristic cause absence of war. The leaders of the thought experiment that leads to the employment of the force because the periods of nuclear war is such evidence to such a conduct the price given the actions of its perceptions which consider the presence of weapons or nuclear weapons escalate decision makers in consideration with probably miscalculation creates that the Soviet Union acrediting of intervening members general SCF the Soviet forces the US preparing for the first strike. You can market a first strike. Yes, the Russia evidence will read defense, but we probably turn Russia because at least the first would be Russia. Great power because involved in Russia. Defense there, okay. I'll come back. The US went back to Russia war shows because I've seen the US not only classes with people the court each other, the I think about the drones, the public actions, whether the missing air party goes to Ukraine, Russia, means the battle where so the French and somebody wants to go on the war with the future powers, the method that way, we should the keep life practice was one like justice, there's no complicated ideology, the word majority is something, this is we're fighting for the world to continue to make sure comparison with that talk, you is this something you can market, asking also all were impact by tonight, because there none of their evidence assumes what they do the global corporation, the UN, if that makes sense, because Russia wouldn't be involved when there was a situation they did great, we probably turn this aside because we were saying Pompeo sucks, which is the question that comes first, the FISM, also like taste, turn this aside, because democracy, yeah, back to Pompeo, democracy is also key to solve their internal links. Therefore, diplomacy defense is a matter because it's our internal link. But also, we turn the case into like sounds the plane has no spillover effect. Current protection B. The waivers argument. Yes, it does solve. The yes still solves because it's a question of the waivers to be implemented have to have the same standard of essential health benefits as the HA evidence. Also, our solvency evidence includes that all their evidence is generic for are the grid is there's no impact to the grid. Verse 12. The grid is imagining U.S. against the links of FAI. Europe's power for more than a week to draw. The lack of skills considered aims to divine. Those races cyber attacks are danger or high school fear. Some are clearly another feverish national testing market there. The grid impact on school. Grid public is already status quo. Also, evidence indicates the grid is resilient and there's no empirical example of what? Yeah, alright, yeah. The grid is resilient, empirically proven. They have no evidence of like a grid escalation that happens.
Okay, 535.
I missed the top. I mean, how people questions about the top to bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
send out that Russia defense card?
No, I did not, sorry. I'll do that.
Make sure you mark it. I marked it like at the bottom. Yes. Started deceiving.
I just did.
Here's one card. I'm just gonna put it next to it.
Sorry about the Russia card.
Oh, yeah. Federalism, Pompeo, the waves advantage. Okay. Is anyone not ready? Great.
The Pompeo debate is at least going to get a little bit messy. They basically dropped the federalism just throughout the whole debate. Grid collapse is a fast impact filter causing extinction because it causes nuclear meltdowns and the collapse of food supply, which makes sustaining civilization impossible. They have basically no impact even except for color cars. So the grid is a little bit resilient. But if we win the argument that the grid could collapse, then all of the rest of the DA swamps their tiny impact events argument. The first argument that they turn it is warrantless. Democracy has no impact on the stability of the grid because it has nothing, because internal democracy has nothing to do with whether or not we maintain adequate grid infrastructure that can allow stability and electricity distribution. The no spillover argument is just a sentence in the 1 year with no warrant. It is new. The 2E did not make a no spillover argument. The wheel evidence is great and says that intrusions in health can spill over to other policy areas. The CISAD might normally be stupid, but when you drop every component of it in the 2EC, it becomes a lot better. The wheel evidence is great. If we would have read more responses in the block, if you made this argument in the 2EC, because health is such an important policy area, it affects spillover scenarios and bulges the federal government to overreach in other areas like education and energy policy. The waivers link to argument 1 is that they've dropped all of the other link arguments. The wheel evidence is that federal preemption crowds out state innovation and specifically spills over in the context of the ACA and mandates that would force people to buy insurance. Second is the Leonard evidence, which says that insurance is a core state police power. Any federal attempt to cover insurance intrudes on those police powers, which crushes the system of federalism. Third is the funding argument they've conceded. It creates a political prisoner's dilemma. The gray evidence says that accepting federal funding makes the states basically subject to federal coercion, regardless of whether or not they have the ability to opt out of certain provisions, which is all their white evidence says. For this, the HHS evidence, they've conceded that the HHS would obviously be the one doing the plan. It would embolden them to do more and more. Our evidence is that every HHS action emboldens them to take more and more regulatory actions that crack down on the states in the future. And five is the Adler evidence that says that any federal interventions chill state innovation because states are innovating in insurance markets now, but the plan tells them that they are no longer needed to do that, which chills their ability to create self-directed policies in the status quo. The grid impact event is wrong, and it can spill over. The 1C proven evidence is the grid says that the grid collapse causes civilizational disruption. The 2NC evidence says that the grid is fragile now and it requires constant maintenance. They've dropped the argument that state innovation is vital to that constant maintenance of the grid, so we don't have to win a huge risk if the grid is going to be disrupted, because they've considered the terminal impact level of the grid collapse, if it does happen, will cause extinction, and we're going to win the direction of Blink on the Pompeo DA. Go there now. You can't impact turn without answering the original impacts or the new ones that the one in our reads. One, diplomacy is an impact filter. There's simmering tensions with great powers like Russia, China, and other great powers now. Those go nuclear. That's the freedom evidence. Only Pompeo solves them, which is the one I see Gardner. Now, the second is the Russia war, specifically Pompeo's hardline attack is vital to solve Russia war and aggression. Ukraine proves that appeasement fails and triggers proxy conflicts and aggression, which means that the hardline attack is either start, and it says the impact is extinction. Their impact even is from 2016. It doesn't assume the failure of appeasement or new tensions that guarantee nuclear conflicts will happen, and they're the only two countries with nuclear arsenals that can wipe out the world, which means that you should air negative. Third is soft power. Pompeo is a career diplomat and will revitalize the State Department that solves boots on the ground, which would be the alternative to effective diplomacy that causes war, but soft power solves it on a global level, which is the Abramsky evidence that they have no answer to. All of those are going to outweigh their stupid Iran, but will impact without really a terminal impact at the end of the debate. The Iran pillow turn one. Tillerson sucks and is spineless now, which makes the deal ineffective because he won't be able to negotiate anything, which is dropped argument. Second is that they've dropped that Iran doesn't care. The Reuters evidence says someone cites the spokesperson from Iran's foreign ministry who was like, yeah, the U.S. sucks anyway. We didn't expect them to do anything. We knew Trump decertified the agreement. We didn't really care about it, which proves that Iran doesn't care and they won't nuclearize. Third is that Trump decertification already happened, and there's no evidence that says Pompeo is uniquely going to pull out of the deal. Their piece of Masovian evidence from the 2EC is from 118 before Pompeo was even brought up, and says that with the Trump is pulling out of the deal in the status quo, which means there's no unique link. Fourth, if the deal is bad, they have no answer to the Rubin evidence and the Lake evidence, which says that it causes cheating and covert proliferation, which is way worse because it allows Iran to build a functioning program under the nose of the IAEA because their inspection regime is spineless and has no enforcement mechanism. There's also a sunsetting provision that says that when the Iran deal goes out of effect, which will happen soon, they will be able to have a fully functioning nuclear arsenal, which outweighs. Remember, their impact is only about Iran getting the bomb, and they're going to get the bomb in the status quo, which is a dropped argument. They say he kills the UN. There's no impact to the UN. Who gives a shit? But soft power assures that that's the Samantha Power evidence from the one bar. The reject our arguments are, it's that Jakar just says that Pompeo is like Trump. They don't have a reason why that's bad. Trump's hawkish foreign policy instincts might be one of the good things about him. They say the next two cards are just like Pompeo's bad for the Iran deal. We can concede that argument and still win because you can see the Iran deal's bad. The rest of that was answered above. The public comments card says the same thing. The yes prolif impact, the Mueller evidence that says that cascades are empirically disproven when they do happen. There's no interstate reaction. Iran has been pursuing nuclear weapons before in the past. We just used a quick attack on them vis-a-vis Stuxnet, which solved instability because we just shut down their centrifuges, which is with the cyber attack, which demonstrates that states don't react to proliferation with nuclear responses. They say they turn Russia. That's obviously wrong. The Ukraine just proves their impact events arguments, and it's from 16 stars from 17 and assumes new tensions. All of the impacts inevitable because UN argument is without a card. There's no evidence that says the UN locks in global stability. Democracy does not turn it because we're straight turning your democracy thing. It has nothing to do with negotiating with revisionist powers like Russia and China who are non-democracies. Our impact is totally external. The wages advantage at the top. They again dropped the turn that moderate levels of inequality are good for democracy, and they've made the argument that it's modeled globally, which means that if anything, the plan is worse for democracy because it limits the inequality, which removes the impetus for leaders to adopt democratization measures because they're scared of insurrection that would happen otherwise. If there's inequality, their only answer, which is totally new, is that there's backsliding now. They didn't respond to this argument in the 2EC whatsoever, which means this card is justified. Democratization high now. Kunzi 18, the economy sees democracy and retreat, the confidence is finding in the question of comparison. It's using to scope to or at least possible is direct democracy as its participation in Swiss democracy possible development of regional and local but are not considered once the global state of democracy is workable democracy that responds to the result of power rights of even stronger regional research on democracy and democracy, which is forward democracy initiatives confirms this reports by the NDT of progress in the development of democracy. The Malaysian, their impact card is from a Malaysian politician, which is alarmist and does not say war. Their separatism card is terrible. It says that there's 4 other reasons. I rehighlighted that and they didn't answer it. Separatism is happening now because of religious and ethnic tensions vis-a-vis the Uyghurs and the nationalists. There's no Asia impact. The Bisley evidence says that there are 15 other institutions that are not ASEAN that can check conflict, and they've dropped that ASEAN fragmentation is inevitable for a host of political reasons that they cannot resolve.
should vote F because we will win the advantage, which filters all of the dissent. Backsliding specifically causes a rise in authoritarianism and collapse of MAD, which results in global nuclear war. Separatist pressures cause state collapse, which results in regional powers, and the SCA specifically because of insurgency going on there. That's the Kurlans have evidence. The case turns have never made sense. We have answered them. The 2AC made it very clear that this does not assume the uniqueness evidence / the specificity of our arguments in describing the political atmosphere of the SCA. Moderate inequality might be good, but that is not a description of what inequality looks like in the SCA specifically. It is extreme, which is why people are electing authoritarian leaders. Their hands are tied because they feel like even if they put faith in the leaders that they have already elected, they will not adopt democratizing practices because they do not think that those practices are effective because of the U.S.'s inability to elevate the middle class, which has always been our modeling argument. Literally, the link term makes absolutely zero sense in the context of the internal link to the app. Our argument is that we resolve the election of those authoritarian leaders by making our system seem effective, which means that the link term that they have proposed is our internal link argument, which resolves election of leaders that eventually cause withdrawal of programs like ASEAN. Now, the democracy high now argument is very generic. It does not assume the political climate of Southeast Asia, which is the specific impact argument I'm going for. It also is not specific to our global uniqueness argument, which is that democracy is low. Democracy is going to be lower over time on a global scale because of the election of populist leaders like Trump / the successful election of Trump on a domestic level. That means that their evidence is just a snapshot of the status quo in terms of what the global picture of democracy looks like. But our evidence describes a global trend in how people elect leaders / which leaders they see as attractive because of the election of Trump. Now, the impact evidence they have indicted is much better than they give us credit for. Yes, it is from a Malaysian politician because that individual is describing the domestic political climate of Malaysia and countries like Malaysia, which is why it's important. That is the only impact we're going for. The separatism now argument does not answer, again, the specificity of our scenario. The separatist conflicts they're citing are conflicts like the Uyghur / mainland China conflicts, which are not specific to conflicts between insurgencies in places like Southeast Asia who have a propensity to elect leaders like Duterte, who are authoritarian, which is our argument. Also, even if they win this argument, we have already answered in cross-examiner speeches that it does not matter because the people who elect those ethnically insurgent leaders are the same people who elect nationalist leaders, which is again our argument that people feel like their hands are tied into electing those people because any other model of democratic engagement, any other model of democratic uplifting appears to fail. Now, the big evidence it does not answer our argument because our argument is that institutions like ASEAN will fail even if other institutions can check. Those will become ineffective over time because people will elect leaders like Duterte on a local scale, and those people just don't give a shit about anybody but their own countries. Now, the Pompeo dissent, I do not need to win a large risk of the impact trends because of the vagueness of all of the impact evidence they read. Their evidence cites general trends in how diplomacy would go in a world where Pompeo was nominated, but does not elicit specific scenarios. Even the Russia evidence that they have read is not specific, and it's not specific in its analysis of what Pompeo would do to start a conflict. It is just the description of why tensions are high now, and Pompeo has a risk of exacerbating those things. So you should prefer the affirmative impact evidence because it describes specific actions that Pompeo would take to do things like withdraw from the JCPOA. That does cause Iran lash out because it causes Iran to perceive a lack of a global commitment to diplomacy with nations, not only including Iran, but others in the region, which is our impact argument. They have not answered. That comes before any of their impacts because again it is specific and fast in time frame. You should prefer it. The democracy impact is definitely a filter to the diplomacy impact because diplomacy requires that other people want to engage in the United States in the first place, which they increasingly do not know what to do in a world where one, our government seems ineffective because of a lack of democratic uplifting, but two, also they have elected authoritarian leaders that do not give a fuck about the U.S. because those people seem most desirable in terms of what they think their votes will do. Now, the Musavian already does say the pro-lip is an impact in Rex U.S. alliances and UN credibility. There is an impact of that. It says it causes a collapse of man, which I've impacted on the case already. Trump did opt to extend the deal. Highest standard of nuclear transparency proves that if Iran pulls out due to U.S. withdrawal, they will fast-track nuclear weapons development. They already have the material. They will cause proliferation of other countries in the region, like Saudi Arabia, which they don't have impact even to. We do not need to win. The Iran deal is good. Iran deal is key to UN Security Council and credible alliances, so even if it's not good enough itself, it's key to signal linkages, which are good. Now, Iran deal is unprecedented alliance push. There's no impact defense, no proliferation exceeded in the 2R. It causes arms racing and reduces U.S. influence, which check on it also increases risk of miscalculation and terrorist gains of nuclear weapons. We have answered both of their scenarios, but they did not answer ours. Impact defense does not assume that arms racing does not follow MAD, which is all of our filter argument, and deterrence because weapons would be so dispersed, but deterrence check regional powers like Russia. This is the conceded one error evidence. Also, they've conceded the perception suppression argument. Discourse is key because it emboldens North Korea, which they will lead to North Korea blow. If there's no answer to that in the 2 that will escalate ancient wars. The Iran deal is not bad. It has high nuclear transparency standards. I've already explained that Pompeo was hawkish. He will not pursue diplomacy, which even if you don't buy the turn, at least Pompeo will report their argument is that Trump is hawkish too. That doesn't apply to our scenario because he's not hawkish in the context of the Iran deal, which our evidence says he's not going to pull out of. Now the federals have just said, I don't really need to spend any time here because this is outright silly. It has been from the beginning, which is why I've always felt comfortable blowing it off. The impact evidence here on the one sees in the context of a complete loss of electricity domestically across the entirety of the United States, which is obviously not something the plan results in. All of the grid resilience evidence should be filtered through the unlikelihood of an internal link. Because of that, the grid is resilient because it is sectored, and the U.S. federal government maintains operations that secure its stability. All of that impact evidence answers the internal link because their argument is that the affirmative leads to a restriction of state control's ability to maintain their own grids. But it's not a problem if the federal government can already do that, and the impact has to be so large for their impact to happen because they have stated that literally all electricity would have to go away. That would cause a loss of all food. Even if that's not probable, it's huge in time frame, which means you should vote out because it's all short. Do you want us to put together a card talk?
We can do it.
I'll get the mic.
No, they didn't ask for it.
debate, very enjoyable. The decision is a 3-0 for the negative from Kentucky. Congratulations. I can go first. I'm sure they'll have a lot to add to the stuff I say, so I'll try to keep it somewhat short. I kind of start here with the federalism disadvantage, and I think that the negative is overwhelmingly winning this DA, and I think that starts with just too few args in the 2AC. Now, granted, when you got Adolf, I understand it's tough to pick and choose, but I do think you needed some more there for sure. Clearly, all you go for in the 2AR is this impact defense, but I just don't think you have the goods to win this argument and really create any type of kind of significant takeout to this disadvantage. Really, as they kind of point out, your impact defense is really all descriptive of the status quo, where states are innovating and they're upgrading and they're maintaining this grid infrastructure, but I don't think either your Clark evidence or your Birch evidence makes an argument about why state failings kind of wouldn't happen, right? Why feds might step in to take over effective maintenance of the grid, or why the grid would still be resilient even if the state stopped innovating and maintaining it. I think their Pesco and Wells evidence is pretty good that that the grid is fragile, and it's kind of resilient. But I'm sorry, it's fragile, and if it's resilient, it's only because it's tended to constantly by the states, which are critical to infrastructure to maintaining it, which you concede, obviously, that you kind of stop all of that. So, I think at the end of this federalism DA, they're winning a really, really big, significant risk of extinction. And once I decide that, I think it becomes a pretty difficult uphill battle for you. The case debate, I kind of go to next. Case debate, I think they definitely win this turn. I think this needs to be answered much better in the 2AC. Just the substance of the link turn itself, right? You're really only making this uniqueness argument, but I just think their evidence is just significantly better on this question. The 1AC evidence is kind of speculative. It suggests that the U.S. kind of elected Trump in response, to, among other things, the populist pressure growing out of inequality. But I don't think you have any evidence proving that that's caused other countries to begin to model that and begin to backslide. It's like one of those things where your tag's a little bit better than the card in that question, I think. I think the affirmatives, the Renat evidence, it's really good. I think it's the best in the round on the question of democracy uniqueness. It's from 2018. It makes methodological indicts of your uniqueness evidence, and it also proves with extensive data that democracy is both alive and well, but it's also kind of resilient right now to pressures to turn away from it in the context of your link card. So once I resolve that uniqueness question in their favor, I think they internally turn the app. And I'll, when I kind of get to the Pompeo DA, I'm not sure that even if you can win the entirety of your link turn there, that you're going to be in a good place. They clearly have these kind of parallel impact terms to this that I don't think you're doing a very good job of answering. I also think you need to answer the sunset provision argument that I don't think is reliant on Trump pulling out. I just think it's going to sunset, it's going to go away, and you really don't have any answer to that. So I think they win some impact turns on here. They got a pretty decent mitigator on I'm sorry. They have a lot of impacts. You have one decent impact turn, but I think it's mitigated. And I think they just win a big risk of the extinction on federalism and the case term, so that's why I vote negative.
So I largely agree. I conclude that this decide needs more in order for you to completely mitigate the risk of it. I think that if it's fine if you want to go for just defense, take side or decide, that's okay with me. I just think you need a really strong push on it, and I think you need to spend more time fleshing out the warrants in your evidence, because I think some of it might be like Len said, there's a lot of it that could potentially be in the context of the status quo or in the context of states being key, which is hard for me to parse out when I'm just kind of reading the cards one against another. So I think that there is a big risk of this decide. I think, again, on the case argument, the concession of the turn, I think that it's a valiant effort in the 2AR, but I think you're also conceding some of their case arguments that are like the causes and the other institutions check and those sort of things, just little technical things that even if I give you that your scenario is somewhat unique, that I think that the risk of the impact is still pretty small. When I get to the Iran decide, similarly, I think that there are some technical concessions on the specifics of how the Iran deal, whether or not it's bad, also whether or not sunsets happen, which means that Iran getting the bomb might potentially just be inevitable. So there's only a risk that soft power diplomacy would be a better way to go in terms of that. The thing that gave me pause a little bit on this dissad was the perception argument about North Korea. It's not really well explained in the 2AR. It's not super well explained anywhere in the debate by anyone, so I don't really think I can vote on it or anything, but it's around, so maybe both teams think about that a little bit more.
You needed a moment in the 2NR in
Yeah.
that, I thought as well. It's
For
just like,
sure.
look, this perception or this discourse link makes no sense. Here's
Right.
why.
Yeah, I do.
Just
I
talk
think that
about
was a thing in the line art.
What's
Yeah,
that?
they
I think
have,
that was a thing in the line art.
the card is just kind of like rhetoric matters and people perceive it and it could cause people to lash out is sort of the argument. In the context of North Korea, whether or not that's the thing, I don't know. Irrelevant. Not irrelevant, but like, in my decision, irrelevant. So maybe if you wanted to go that way and try and like spin your way out of, I don't know, if that is a like shiny object that you can be like, oh, I didn't answer, sort of thing. Meh. For this dissad as well, I think you all should be making arguments that like Bolton is an alt cause, that his would throw their entire dissad into question marks. So that's just one thing I thought of. Oh, and the 1AR, I think you spend too much time on the T arguments. Yeah, I think that's where you
No,
got.
I was
got
thinking
behind.
about that, like what would I do in that situation? That's tough because
Mhm.
you're probably not T, but you know, that's just me. That's just me. Not that it's saying in this debate I would have voted against you, but I understand you're kind of, oh, I got to spend some time there.
Yeah, I was thinking that with the winner. So do
Yeah.
you think that there are any places that could cut? 'Cause definitely the gas figure was enough time.
Mhm.
Um,
I didn't look through the specifics on the T flow. I just think in general, I don't know. The limits.
that would have been an easy
You
winner.
also in the cross-sex of the 2 and C, it's a little too much on like. I get your argument. The limits are relevant in terms of like single pair is also really big. I think you spend too much time in the cross-sex. I think you can try and bite back against some of this dissad because this dissad is weird and other things. But yeah, just I don't know. I think that you just need like you get kind of repetitive on some of the we meet sort of stuff. So maybe just more concise explanation of your we meet and then just try and knock out some of this impact defense to limits a little bit more efficiently and try and get back into the ticky-tacky on some of the rest of the debate.
Potentially kick the case and just go for the impact.
Yeah.
terms and dig in, you know. It's another option.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree at a high level. I think that there's just two large dissads that the negative has that outweigh the case. The grid dissad, I think, outweighs is just largely undercovered throughout the debate. I thought the 2AR argument that this assumes total grid collapse all across the U.S., that's persuasive, but it needs to be a little bit earlier. And maybe that should be where some of the cross-sex time is spent on this dissad is what card says the whole grid goes down. But I think that's fairly new in the debate and just not really, there's no card that, well, you do have some resiliency cards, but I think their card is better at answering on the question of whether it's fragile or not. So something I sort of struggled with is that in the 2AR you say we should frame everything through the democracy advantage, but it's a little unclear to me because you immediately follow that by I'm only going for the Southeast Asia impact. And so I had trouble reconciling those two things of, and the part that gave me pause for a little bit is if it's true that if the next argument is correct that democracy is high now, that checks the majority of global conflict. Then that means the only impact is the grid collapse, which I think makes it very difficult for you to win. And I also looked at the 1AC. I don't think there's a uniqueness card that says like backsliding increasing or authoritarianism increasing. At least not like a fairly recent card. There's the impact evidence around Southeast Asia is from 2014, and maybe just some application of their global trends don't account for Southeast Asia or something like that. I also thought that the Russia impact isn't really answered in the 2AR, and I think that also sort of outweighs the risk of the Iran Corliss deal. So I think that's like a quick and clear conflict. Because a lot of the 2AR is framing on the dissad if they don't have a specific scenario, which isn't true when they get the Russia impact. And so I think a fair bit of the time in the 2AR spent on that isn't that useful. Whereas instead, if you spend the time on your impact outweighs Russia, or maybe spending more time on case, I think is more strategic. I do think that it's still sort of a bad spot in this 2AR. From an overall strategy perspective, I'm not sure if your approach is too ambitious, because they obviously straight turn the dissad, so then you're sort of stuck going for that. But the debate just gets really big, really fast, and you don't have any outs to collapse it down. because you're stuck going for, in this case, the two disads. And you have to, and since you're straight turning one of the advantages, you're stuck going for that too. And so it just makes the debate very big for you and creates way more places where you could slip up and let them get back into it.
Yeah, I wasn't playing on straight turning the advantage.
Yeah.
I just like doing the 2AC coverage. I had a bunch of stuff that inequality and marks and defense slated, but I just figured like why not make it offense?
Yeah.
And was worried about a 1AR that like read a bunch of cards in bioterror and doubled down on that. But yeah, okay.
I mean, I guess your out is you just go for key.
Yeah.
If they like call your bluff on one of these and just unload, then yeah.
Just in terms of 2AC, when you go back to inequality to read a negative card, that's when you should have gone to federalism and read more. And then, especially because I think I don't know exactly how your AF works at the end of this debate, but if you're going to say that you don't price control, then why are you worried about this farm or this and that? So then maybe spend more time there on T too.
I also probably think your no backsliding cards need to be in the block. Like y'all didn't call them on that, but I do have 2AC making, like, I wasn't sure if you were applying it on the turn, but I do have them making a backsliding now argument, so if you had called them on that, there's a chance of like, not allowing it, so I put that out earlier. Any questions?
Do you have any other recommendations for 1AR efficiency? Do you think in this debate it would have been strategic just to go for the impact on Papio all in?
I mean, I think there's different ways you could have gone. I mean, one is maybe, I agree with Jenna, seemed like a lot of inefficiencies in the 1AR, just kind of places where you're repetitive. So this could be a thing if you tweak up your 1AR blocks on T, for example. In other places, maybe you shave off 30 seconds there, maybe even a little bit longer. So I think efficiency could clear up some of this. But yeah, faced with this big, the block and what you got to do in the 1AR, I think it was, and because we did drop that turn or, not answered very well in the 2AC, I think it wouldn't have been a bad idea maybe to say, you know what, do this, because then you would have had time to like answer the new impacts on the DA and more effectively extend and develop the Iran argument as well. So I think you had a couple things maybe you could look at doing differently to improve it, but there's going to be a tough 1AR to give no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you still have to deal with the turn at some point, and I just think that while you go to the page and you make some arguments, it just feels unresponsive because you're not like flagging it as responses, so it's hard for me to like apply them, and then some of them I think might be applicable. So just make sure you're flagging arguments a little bit more. I think that'll make it easier for you to get through some of them faster. It obviously slows you down some places, but and it's a pick and choose. So, yeah.
So a curiosity thing, ideologically, if the next goes for T against apps like these, and it's like relatively easily debated, do you think this is getting option?
Leanings. I don't know. I've not developed leanings.
So who gets it when it's a tie? Is
Yeah.
That's tough. I mean,
I haven't judged very many T debates. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I'm kind of like in my heart, I'm with y'all. I think,
Glenn's with you.
I think there's a lot of single payer apps out there, and I think you do a really good job of making these arguments. And but if it's evenly debated out, and they maybe win that there's not a big distinction between the limits, under the single payer. There's more than 25. I don't know. I mean, if it's that close, I probably would go for substance because in this debate you were ahead on the substance.
Right.
So I don't know. It was close enough that I think you could have gone through it. It just been it would have been a tougher road because there's just so much on the page. But I'm feeling you.
I do sort of agree. I think that it's definitely an option for the 2NR. Not necessarily just this debate, but in general. Got to pin the app to something.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks, y'all.
You all, I think, just more explanation of exactly how the app operates, either in